Hello and welcome to Salute Your Sports. I'm Kamen and Tom here with Tom Castleman. We took a couple weeks off, had a holiday break over the 4th of July, but we're back and ready for an awesome show. We'll be breaking down NBA free agency. We had some time to see what happened, what stars got paid, who's worth it, who's not. An NFL trade going down as well. Baker Mayfield on a new team. We'll have an MLB midseason award show. Betting locks of the week, statements of the week. It's crazy, Tom, that this is the summer. It is July. There's not that many sports going on, but there's so much sports news going on. I can't wait to get into it. 4th of July break is done. Our bye week is done. We are ready to rock. We're ready to roll. I cannot wait for an awesome show. How are you doing today?
Doing really well. Also super excited for the show just because there is so much to touch on, and we are going to begin in the NBA. Comment, as you mentioned, NBA free agency. We had the moratorium period where we have a flurry of deals taking place within the first 5 minutes. Really interesting how teams are able to work so quickly to get details ironed out with players and their agents. But perhaps the biggest news coming out of NBA free agency didn't actually have to do with a free agent whatsoever.
Nope.
As a Chicagoan, we kind of thought, hey, Zach LaVine is the biggest unrestricted free agent out there. He made it pretty well known that he was going to be talking with other teams just to kind of see what his options were, even though Bulls could offer him more years, more money than anyone else. And then Kevin Durant steals the headlines away from the rest of the NBA. 4 years left on his contract, but he is requesting a trade away from the Brooklyn Nets. This coming off the heels of Kyrie Irving opting into his roughly $36 million option for this season after he was unsuccessful in finding a sign and trade partner around the league. So just really weird, wacky things going on in Brooklyn. I mean, bigger picture, we don't have to touch on this right now necessarily, but moved heaven and earth. When they signed Kevin Durant, they signed Kyrie Irving, move heaven and earth to acquire James Harden, then trade away James Harden.
With
this trio playing not even a full NBA season together, and then giving Kyrie Irving permission to seek a sign and trade, and then granting Kevin Durant his request to look into getting traded elsewhere. So I guess we'll focus on the player. Kevin Durant. Obviously, when we talk about some of the all-time greats to ever play the game, Durant certainly is one of them. So things like legacy come into play, but also more immediately winning another NBA championship. Where do you see as some of his best fits heading into next season and beyond? Does legacy matter to you where, some of these destinations are? What are your kind of early thoughts on Kevin Durant? Is he best off with the Nets or elsewhere?
So first and foremost, there is nowhere else that Kevin Durant could go to that could really boost his legacy. It's crazy because typically when you win a ring, it's an automatic legacy boost. But if there's one player in the history of sports that winning a ring for has barely boosted, if at all, maybe it's hurt him, is Kevin Durant. Because here's the deal. He was the big time star with the OKC Thunder. He made the Western Conference Finals. He made the NBA Finals one year, but couldn't win. He couldn't get over the hump. He goes and joins the Warriors team that already had a championship, already had a 73-9 season. And guess what? They win 2 rings with him. Big part of those teams. But then he leaves and they win another ring without him. So they won a ring before him, a ring after him. That hurts his legacy as far as those 2 rings. Looking at some of the destinations he could go to, as far as the team that I think has the best chance to win a ring with Kevin Durant, it's definitely the Phoenix Suns. I mean, the Phoenix Suns and Miami Heat are 2 of the teams rumored, the two of the teams he wants to go to, which, again, the 1 seeds the last 2 seasons in the NBA. Fair or not, that is what the perception is with Kevin Durant. I think it's a little different than LeBron James, because LeBron James, 1, never requested a trade, always stayed out his full contracts. And 2, he went on teams and they became champions because of him. They weren't champions before him. They weren't 1 seeds before him. So a little bit different scenario on Durant and LeBron. But I think the Suns, if they have Durant, they've got CP3 and Devin Booker on paper. Obviously, a lot of other things can change right now, but on paper, that would be the best roster in the NBA. I actually think that would be huge for CP3's legacy more than Durant, because CP3 doesn't have a ring yet. They would lose DeAndre Ayton most likely in that scenario. It looks like Ayton is not going to get an extension with the Suns. We don't know what's going to happen for sure. But I don't think they need DeAndre Ayton if they have Kevin Durant. Obviously, chemistry has to work. CP3 doesn't care about shooting as much. He's going to be fine with Durant. Now, does Booker want a lot of spotlight as a young player? That's a different question. So I don't know how the chemistry would work, but on paper, that's his best destination. All the stuff I've seen online as far as the Miami Heat, they would have to give up a lot to get him. They would give up a lot of role players. Phoenix is in a better position where, yes, they would give up some role players, but they already have 2 superstars. Miami has 1 in Jimmy Butler. So a little different scenario for those 2 teams. So the Suns is the place where he can go to win a ring. But I don't know that it's going to help his legacy too much. The only way his legacy can significantly go up is if he stays with the Nets, if they find a way to work it out with him, they find a way to work it out with Kyrie. And that's one of the things I saw on one of the ESPN NBA shows yesterday, was that the Nets want to really make sure they get their money's worth for Durant. And somewhere in the back of their heads, they might be hoping that as time passes, he changes his mind. Because I think that would be best for the Nets, because as you mentioned, a mess of a franchise. They took Durant, Irving, and Harden. And when the 3 of them played, when they actually played and were not injured, they actually played very well. And not injured / not willing to play because of vaccination status. They were actually really good together. And that's why I didn't like the Harden trade, because they basically had a year and a half together, and a lot of it was not playing together. So I thought they should have kept Harden last year. But it's kind of how sports are now, unfortunately. Like, guys can request trades whenever they want to. And we'll get into this later in the show. But as a team, I don't want to give a guy a 5-year deal unless he really is that amazing, and unless you think he's really going to stay with your franchise. Like Jokic with the Nuggets, like, he loves Denver, they love him. That makes sense. But if you're one of these other guys, why would you give someone a 5-year deal worth like $50 million a year when they might request a trade? I don't know. So Durant, to me, really nowhere he can go that can help his legacy. Phoenix, he can win a ring, but the Nets is really the place he should stay if he wants to boost his legacy and hope it works out.
Yeah, I think that in terms of, best fits, Brooklyn, and then as you mentioned, Phoenix, Miami, already touched on those as being probably the best spots for him to win a ring. One that's definitely wishful thinking. I don't think they have the assets to acquire him, but if you could imagine Zach LaVine and Kevin Durant in Chicago, that'd be a really dynamic pairing. And, Zach LaVine being on the USA Olympic team, they've played together a little bit. They've had kind of those connections. I think Chicago would be like a nice, fun little place. I certainly wouldn't say no to having Kevin Durant here. Sure. Again, fit as far as making sure it's a fair and equitable deal for Brooklyn is going to be really difficult. And that's kind of where I come down on this. We're in this era of player empowerment where players can request deals and make it known that they are unhappy with their situation with multiple years left on a contract.
Crazy.
And the thing is, like, grass isn't always greener on the other side, that kind of tried and true trope where, yeah, you might want to go to another place, but if you get traded to another place, especially when you're a caliber player of a Kevin Durant, the amount of things that location would have to give up to acquire you wouldn't be in that much better of a situation talent-wise to continue contributing forward. Also, one team that we forgot to mention potentially as a good fit for Kevin Durant to win a ring, Golden State, because the way that they operate over the cap, they would be able to send off enough money to offset Kevin Durant and make that at least somewhat echo. If you like Andrew Wiggins, you throw in a couple other guys, some picks, you can make it happen if you're Golden State and bring in Kevin Durant while keeping your current core 3. So that's just another team to throw out there
does he want to be the most hated athlete of all time?
I don't know if it necessarily, I don't think he would be hated necessarily. I mean, kind of moving into the legacy part of the discussion, I don't think it really matters where he wins another championship as far as his legacy goes, simply because I think his legacy is pretty well established. I mean, what are we talking about as his legacy? He's one of the greatest scorers of all time. He's got 10 All NBA teams. Let me pull it up here. Won 2 titles with the Warriors. Was the Finals MVP both seasons, and I think objectively he was the best player on those teams.
Man, it was close. It was close. The West.
I would say that he was a better player and more, well, not necessarily more important, but a better player than Stephen Curry.
If you look at their stats, the 2 years they played together, both regular season and postseason, almost identical. I've actually compared these stats before. Curry and Durant's stats almost identical. One of the years they won a ring, Curry was actually the better player throughout the playoffs. He just was not as good in the finals. It was like a 1 and 1A. It wasn't like he was the clear best player on those teams. Wasn't the clear
best, but he definitely came in and gave an element to that Warriors team that they didn't have, which was go and get whatever bucket you need to get at any point in time. In terms of he can take it coast to coast and get a dunk nice and easy, or he could hit a 3-point shot. Just a little bit more dynamic, and I guess saying more dynamic than Steph Curry is a bit of a challenging thing to say. But in terms of being able to get your own bucket, I think Kevin Durant's one of the 2 or 3 people on the entire planet who can do that a bit better than Curry.
Yeah,
so
but Tom,
I think as far as legacy goes, that's why I don't think it necessarily matters where he wins another ring, because what do more rings get him as far, are we talking greatest of all time legacy?
No, we're talking top 10. Top 10.
I think he's established as a top 10 player regardless of where he wins another championship. Well, I don't think that necessarily matters.
Look, Tom, to be honest with you, I more or less agree with you. However, that's not the way the general public sees it. I've always felt that rings, sports are a team game. Rings get overblown a little bit. However, the way Durant is perceived is that he can't win a ring alone. That is the way. No one can.
I mean, LeBron needed Wade and Bosh. Jordan needed Pippen.
I agree
Magic
with you.
Needed Kareem. Everybody.
I agree with you. This is not how people think. In people's heads he's afraid to win a championship as the main guy. He's not loyal to his team. That's just not the way society looks at things. I mean, Giannis is getting all this love, rightfully so, too, for staying in Milwaukee, winning a championship in Milwaukee. We have Curry, all this love for winning with the Warriors. And even though MJ, again, he didn't win until Scotty got there, till Phil got there, until they got Horace Grant and obviously Rodman in the later years, all these extra pieces. However, the perception is that Michael Jordan was loyal to his team, didn't have to leave, won a ring. They didn't have to get him another player. The perception around Durant is that he's not a leader. He needs to go win a ring somewhere else. He's not the guy that could lift his team. And I'll be honest with you, it's mostly a false narrative. However, there is something to be said. There is something to be said a little bit about leadership. Durant is a fantastic player, like Aaron Rodgers in the NFL. I just feel when you're talking about who's more valuable, Curry versus Durant, who's a better player, that's a great debate. And maybe you give a very slight edge to Durant. But if we're talking about more valuable, Curry's a little bit more valuable than Durant. And I'd argue that he was even more valuable during those championship teams because he's a guy that can ISO when he needs to, but he also is happy to let other guys shoot. He's happy to adjust to whatever the team needs. Mm-hmm. And the Warriors are better when they're playing that, freestyle where they're just jacking up threes, moving the ball around. Absolutely. It's not really an ISO-based team. So I'd argue that Durant, comparatively speaking to a lot of the other all-time greats, does not have the intangible of being a guy that is loved by his teammates. And this may not be fair. Again, this is stuff that it's said out there in the media. We are not in the locker room. So there might be a little bit of unfairness to that. But just based on what we've seen, how he interacts over interviews, over social media, he is not the guy that I think of that's the leader of my franchise. That's the role model for the kids in basketball. That's not who we see. A Curry, a Giannis, maybe LeBron, even MJ. MJ led in a different way, but there's no doubt that MJ was a leader. Durant doesn't scream leader to me, and him joining, super teams doesn't look great as far as his legacy. Again, a little bit unfair. I agree with what you're saying, but the way the public perceives it, I think that his legacy, should be for sure top 10, if not top 5 player on skill wise. But legacy wise, I think he's a little bit lower ranked than where his talent should be because of all these extra little things.
Absolutely. So yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with the Brooklyn Nets star. It's going to continue to be a wild and crazy ride. I mean, he's under contract for like, I think 3 or 4 more seasons. This could be something as simple as by requesting a trade out. Maybe he's kind of pushing the Nets to go a little bit more in on getting players to win a championship. It could be one of those kind of reverse psychology things. I have no idea. All I know is that the NBA is bonkers, and nothing. Well, I shouldn't say nothing, but few things exemplify that more than there was one team that was interested in the sign and trade for Kyrie Irving. The Los Angeles Lakers, something common that you were very prescient in touching upon in a previous show. Basically, in order for this to work, just from a pure financial standpoint, Russell Westbrook would have to be leaving Los Angeles for Kyrie Irving to arrive in Los Angeles. And as Laker fans love to do, they'll offer every last bottom feeding player on their roster and say, that's good enough for a superstar, right? Quite frankly, if you're the Lakers, do you make this trade, Kamen and Jeff? Because I know you're Mr. Laker, you're Mr. LeBron. You want him to
LeBron. Gosh. So, Tom, I'll be honest with you. I tend to, for the most part, obviously there's guys we like, we dislike, but I tend to say that I like most athletes.
Sure.
Kyrie Irving and Russell Westbrook. I'm sorry, guys, if you're listening, but when I think of guys that I like the least, I'll put it kindly, like the least. Those are at the top of my list. Guys that I just do not love as human beings. And talking about leaders and cancers to team, point A, exhibit A, Kyrie Irving and Russell Westbrook. So the Lakers should make this trade only for the simple fact that Kyrie Irving is a better player than Russell Westbrook. He's a better shooter. He's more efficient. He's a better scorer. He's already won with LeBron. Clearly Westbrook, or Westbrick as I call him, I've always felt is the most overrated athlete in the history of sports. Quite frankly, looking at his field goal percentages, turnover numbers, a stat pad champion he is. But he was obviously a good player, not an MVP. Ridiculous he won MVP. Least deserving player of an MVP in the history of the league. You know, he can get all these uncontested rebounds just so he can get triple doubles. You know, he'd have the ball in his hand every time. Yeah, it's easier. But obviously he has regressed, Tom, as evident by his ranking on NBA 2K, 58 and threes, 56, whatever. Worse than Ben Simmons. That's a little bit of a stretch, but that's what they ranked him, like 70-something overall. So Westbrook clearly not working in LA. It's crazy, Tom, because this upcoming season, Westbrook, I believe, we just had some contracts coming down, but I believe is the second highest paid player in the NBA, ahead of LeBron, from what I saw on the internet. So even if he's third or fourth, I missed it by one, whatever, he's a top 5 paid player in the NBA. I don't think he was ever a top 5 player, certainly not a top 5 player right now. So I think they should trade him if they can. The beauty of this, though, I'll say this, I don't think the Lakers or anyone should commit long-term to Westbrook or Kyrie. The beauty of this swap is I believe their contracts both end at the end of this year. So you can make the swap and then reevaluate. If you don't like it next season, you don't have to be tied down to these guys long-term. That's the only good thing here. Kyrie has won a ring with LeBron before. I don't know how different it's going to be, though, because I feel like that first ring, Kyrie was a very good player, but LeBron was the clear number one. It was established. He's the top dog on this team. Kyrie, the last few years, like with his ego, almost feels like he wants to be the top dog. And I don't know how that's going to fit with LeBron and Davis. I mean, the biggest thing the Lakers need is a healthy LeBron and Anthony Davis. If those guys are healthy, they will compete against anybody, regardless of who else is playing on the team. But absolutely, I think you try and make the deal for Kyrie. I don't think you commit to him long-term, but, for one season, I would rather have Kyrie Irving than Russell Westbrook. But I don't know that I want either of those guys. And it's evident because no one else wants Westbrook and no one else wants Kyrie. Go figure, it's the Nets and Lakers, the only teams potentially looking to pick up / offload those guys.
Absolutely. I mean, if I'm the Lakers, I make that deal in a heartbeat as well because of all the things that you mentioned. Kyrie Irving, younger player, better, more efficient scorer. He knows what he's getting with LeBron James, and LeBron James knows what he's getting with Kyrie because this is something we've seen. There's always some sort of adjustment period when it comes to playing with a high usage player like LeBron James, who basically runs everything both on and off the court. So you absolutely make that trade if you're the LA Lakers. Quite frankly, I don't know who would be taking on Russell Westbrook. I mean, if we're talking about talent in terms of like team efficiency or something like that, I understand that he's not necessarily the best fit. But if you're looking for somebody to just put up numbers, be really entertaining and energetic for your fan base, Russell Westbrook, like we talk about stars who sit and go on load management. One thing that you can absolutely credit to Russell Westbrook, he never, ever takes time off if he's healthy enough to play. So I think there's obviously a place in the league for him. I don't think that the Lakers are the best fit as far as that goes. So obviously you try to upgrade for Kyrie Irving, who is going to be more motivated to play coming out to LA than he currently is for Brooklyn. The problem is just how do you facilitate that trade like at all? Because if you're Brooklyn, why would you take back an older, less healthy, less efficient player? You know, the vaccine mandates are lifted, as far as I know, in New York, so that Kyrie would ostensibly be able to play all the home games next season. So I just don't understand what's in it for Brooklyn. The only
they're sick of him.
Behind this,
they're sick of him.
To be that. Well, I mean, not Durant. I mean, there were rumors that Durant was trying to facilitate a trade where he and Kyrie would go to the same location, which I don't even know.
The Nets are sick of Kyrie, though. I saw a report saying that they actually were just fed up with Kyrie this last season, and they were trying to appease Durant, who actually likes Kyrie, which is weird in its own self. But it seems like Durant
crazy town.
It seems like Durant is the only guy who does like Kyrie. The argument to be made is that more so Harden and Durant because of injuries, but Irving because of injuries and because of his vaccination status has not been available. The argument for Westbrook is that he's going to be available, but I mean, it feels like the Nets are going to go in rebuild mode. The problem with Russell Westbrook, though, Tom, is that he's that guy that needs the ball in his hands to succeed. Sure. And he's not good enough to be the best player on your team and win a championship. But he's also, I don't think he ever was. He's never won a championship as the best player. Like, he's a guy who should be your number 2 or number 3 option, but he's got too much of an ego, and he's not a good enough jump shooter in the modern day NBA to play off the ball. You know, he's an on-ball player, and that's why pairing him with LeBron, another on-ball player, doesn't work. So it's just, he's in that position. I know we talk a lot of times about like the big man who can dominate down low in the post and not shoot threes, how that's kind of gone in today's game. What's gone is if you're a ball dominant player, you're not like particularly the right fit to be on a super team. Like a super team, you need like for example, like LeBron and Davis. Like even though Davis, can dribble the ball, but he's more of a post pick and pop guy, shoot outside shots type situation. Kyrie and LeBron. Kyrie is a good outside shooter. You double team LeBron, he can hit the 3. So very hard for a ball dominant player to win a ring with another superstar. Even with Harden, we're seeing that, how Harden, Durant, and Irving, a lot of it was injuries, but that was like ball dominant players. And part of the reason why Harden can't score anymore is because he doesn't have, the efficiency and the rhythm. He's a guy who needs his rhythm to score a lot of points. And he's still a great passer. He's still a very good player, but he's not an MVP candidate as a passer. So just something to think about.
Absolutely. Well, we'll see what, if anything, happens. Again, it's all wait and see on the Brooklyn Nets as far as, moving and shaking in the NBA goes. But as far as the players that actually had some agency in this offseason, we saw a number of contracts being handed out to both restricted, unrestricted free agents, just extensions for guys to keep them under contract for longer. So we've got a handful here. Do you want to go blow by blow, comment, or do you want me to just read through everything?
No, let's go.
I'm going to be like lump sum.
The way I have it written, like we start Jokic first. We get my take on Jokic, your take,
Sure.
and then we can lump one or two together. But want to go blow by blow, quick by quick, so I don't lose my voice. I talked 4 hours last night on my sports podcast show. Got to make sure my voice is intact. Had a long discussion the first segment. Well, let's make it blow by blow, quick and quick. And we'll start with Jokic.
Absolutely. Jokic signing a 5-year extension worth $264 million to stay with the Denver Nuggets. Basically, worth it or not for the team, worth it or not for the player.
It is worth it for the player and the team. Player, obviously, largest contract in NBA history so far. Salary cap has changed, obviously, inflation, all that. So the deals that we have today are not what we had 5 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. But for the player, obviously worth it. Largest contract ever. For the team, I actually think it's worth it. You can argue that, you would expect the best player in NBA history to have the biggest deal ever. Is Jokic the best player? No, but the numbers have changed. The market's changed. He's won 2 straight league MVPs. Like, he is, you can argue for him being the best player in the game. He is at worst a top 5 player in the game, without question. Jokic, to me, he's fantastic. He really runs that team as a center through his passing, scoring, and rebounding. He loves Denver. Denver loves him. They got to lock him down. This is a great deal for both sides. Absolutely.
Absolutely a win-win, where a smaller market team, quote unquote, hanging on to its superstar. Win-win's the exact perfect way of putting it. Bradley Beal also staying with the team that drafted him, 5 years, $251 million for his maximum extension. Obviously worth it for a player who has had some injury in the past. Is it worth it for Washington? I feel like you're going to go hard on this one.
Not even close. Who is Bradley Beal's agent? You got to give the agent a tip. I don't even know, but are you kidding me?
Oh, there's commission. There's commission,
but got to get even more commission. Are you joking? Bradley Beal. I believe, Tom, this is the second richest player deal in NBA history. Again, things have changed, but Bradley Beal is nowhere near worth this much money. I mean, you look at Bradley Beal, Tom, he is a 3-time All-Star. One time ever he's made all NBA team, a third team, 2021, all NBA third team. So he has never been a top 10 player in the league for his entire career. He's going to be, I believe, the 5th highest paid player next season, 4th or 5th. Obviously, for a contract value over 5 years is the biggest. They didn't even make the playoffs last year. He was injured last year coming off a season. He didn't even play all the games. I don't know how he got this deal. I'll be honest with you. Bradley Beal's a very good player, but he's like a 3rd-tier star. He's that guy that barely makes the All-Star team or barely misses the All-Star team. Something like a 20th best player in the NBA. The 20th best player in the NBA should not, no matter what the salary cap is worth, to be worth $50 million a year. It's outrageous. I mean, it's outrageous. What has this guy ever done to get this much money on a contract? You look at, like, for example, Zach LaVine. If you want to talk about lumping guys together, Zach LaVine getting a 5-year, $212.5 million deal. Zach LaVine is younger than Bradley Beal. I would argue they're roughly similar level players. You can argue Beal's a little bit better, but is he, what is 51 minus 12? That is, oh gosh, got to do math now. Roughly 30, whatever, 35, $40 million more. And we're talking about $7 to $8 million more per year. No, he's not. Bradley Beal should be getting like a Zach LaVine contract, not a $251 million. I mean, they're so far from winning. And I saw something outrageous saying that he thinks they could be a title contender now that he got his max deal. Okay, whatever, buddy. Who else is going to get money on that team? Just made no sense to pay Bradley Beal that much. I don't think another team would have paid him that much. I feel like they could have gotten away with 5-year, 200, and he probably would have signed because he couldn't get anything more elsewhere. I just don't get this deal whatsoever. Granted that he's a little bit older of a player. I know sometimes we have contracts that reward players for what they did, like Kobe Bryant got one of those. But what has Bradley Beal done? The Wizards haven't been like a legitimate finals contender like ever, quite frankly. So I don't get this deal whatsoever. I know the cap is different. I know you got to pay your star, but Not for a third-tier star. No way.
So what we're seeing here is basically just the run-of-the-mill economy of the NBA. And it basically comes down to it's with the way that how max contracts are structured, and they're structured in a way that gives the team who has the player's rights, who's drafted the player, Washington can give an extra year of security. They can give 5 years. All the other teams can only give 4. And then Washington can give a much larger sum of money. And the idea was this is how smaller market teams can basically stay more competitive as far as offering contracts to their superstars and keeping them in town. And with the way that the NBA salary structure has chosen to set up, it's not like football or baseball where you can negotiate whatever numbers you can negotiate against a cap or a luxury tax. It's that there are caps on how much individual players can make. LeBron James, for example, cannot get signed to, say, a $50 million a year deal or 60 or 70 or $80 million a year deal because there's a limit on how much money a team can pay him. And that's basically just the laws of reality as far as the NBA goes. It's either, do you want a player on your team or not? And if you want the player on the team, basically this is the price tag for players who are at the level of a Zach LaVine, a Bradley Beal. You have to pay them the max. Otherwise, you risk them saying, you know what, I'm just going to become an unrestricted free agent and go elsewhere. Teams basically have a choice. It's not so much a negotiation as it is walking up to the counter and saying, okay, ring it up at the register. This is how much we owe. It's just like a fact of how the NBA works. So for Washington, at the risk of losing Bradley Beal for nothing, this was absolutely the right move to give him a max deal, keep him in town. And if they're able to potentially trade him at a later time, they at least have a talented player
no one's going to accept that trade. No one's going to want it.
I'm just saying, if somebody did want that trade and was willing to offer up draft picks or, future assets to get Bradley Beal, this is how things have to go. So it's absolutely worth it for Washington. They would not have been able to sign Bradley Beal if they said, you are getting less than a max deal, because a max deal is basically just like a title. It's some prestige for these players to be able to say, yeah, I'm a max player. The team values me at the highest point that I can have, which is a cap on what I could otherwise, freely earn.
Right. And this cap stuff much better than me. You're contract Castleman, after all. That's what we call you here on the show. But how did Beal get 251 and LaVine got 212.5? I mean, that's what I'm saying.
I think it had to be with all NBA teams, because I don't think LaVine has been an all NBA player, which is why his number was lower.
So one all NBA 13 for Bradley Beal is worth
that makes the difference.
37, 38 million, $39 million, whatever the difference is.
That's what the difference is as far as offering maximum deals. Yes. That's what the NBA
$8 million
difference. Yeah, that's what the CBA says. If you're one of the top 15 players in the NBA, you are able to make more money. It's a bonkers system. It's not like just a straight up salary cap type of thing where it's, offer a player however much a percentage of the cap, because teams used to do that. And that's how we get like Carlos Boozer getting signed for 7 years. And teams are like, oh no, we've made a mistake. And this is basically the NBA's way of saying, we are going to bubble wrap teams that don't know what they're doing and limit the amount of time that they can hamstring their franchise with bad contracts, essentially. And this is the product that we get instead. Instead of the best players being able to make the most amount of money possible, this is the system we have, where players like Jalen Brunson, for example, who I believe is next up on our list, Jalen Brunson as a restricted free agent can get a 4-year deal worth $204 million to go join the Knicks. Again, if you want the player on your team, you have to be able to pay the price.
I don't know what to say, Tom. Jalen Brunson is a very solid role player. He had a great postseason last year, great down the stretch, but really he averaged.
It's 104, not 204 for 4 years. Jalen Brunson's contract. It's 4 years for $104 million, not
104. Oh, is that correct? 104. Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better.
It's still $25 million a year, give or take.
Okay, still makes me feel a little bit better. I'm losing track of these contracts, but nonetheless, I mean, I'm sorry. 16 points, 5 assists last year, career season. He is a glorified role player. Not worth that much to me. But you know what? It's the Knicks. What do the Knicks know? What do I know about the salary cap? It's a broken system. Not worth it to me.
This is the one instance where I'll say not worth it for the team. In all these other cases, I'm going to say it's worth it for the team to do what they did.
Zion is worth it.
Absolutely.
Oh, here we go.
Absolutely, because Zion Williamson signed to a 5-year, $193 million contract with those, all NBA team escalators that we were talking about could go up to $231 million for 5 years. I don't believe Zion played at all this past season. He's been out with injury. He's battled weight gain issues for the New Orleans Pelicans. But the one thing everybody can agree on is he is still a massively talented individual with a ton of potential. If you're a team like New Orleans, when was the last time that New Orleans signed a big-time free agent? If you think about all the great players that they've had come through there, Anthony Davis was drafted there. Eric Gordon, as a good player, was drafted there. Chris Paul drafted there. They don't really, or they're not able to sign free agents. So if they want to keep a potentially generational talent in Zion Williamson, this is the way they got to do it. They have to give him all of the money.
Can't they give him the money? Can't they give him the money for 2 years? Because here's my thing with Zion. By the way, here's a Zion Williamson stat. This is a pro Zion stat because I'll give you the pro and against. So Zion, Tom, is the only player in NBA history to average 25 or more points per game over his career and shoot 60% or higher. So only guy ever to do it.
Yeah.
Here's the anti-Zion stat. There's 82 games in an NBA season. Yep. He has been in the NBA for 3 seasons now. Yep. He's played 85 games. 85 games. The guy is simply not available. I cannot commit 5 years to a guy who's not available. You mentioned all the issues he's battled. Again, I hope he comes through. I hope that he does get to play. I don't want to wish ill upon anyone. I don't do that. But simply for a guy who has played 85 games in his first 3 seasons, I cannot give a 5-year deal that is worth whatever, $40 million a year upwards, close to 50 some years with incentives. I just can't do that. I don't know. Is there a middle ground? Can they do a 2-year extension? Like, can you do a max?
Possibly.
I mean, like,
if you're Zion Williamson, do you sign that, or you just say, nope, I'll wait till I'm a free agent and then I'll go play in New York, I'll go play in LA? If you're New Orleans, you want to lock him in for as long as possible, because if he turns out to be great, then he's on your team. Otherwise, you're not going to have somebody like him on your team.
It's such a broken,
pretty well.
Such a broken system, man. I don't. It doesn't make
that's
any
an entirely
sense
different conversation. Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense to me how you can commit 5 years. Whatever, roughly 200 million. We don't know what the incentives could be. 193, could be 231, could be somewhere in the middle. I'm going to say ballpark it. 5 years, 200 million for a guy who's played 85 games in 3 seasons. I don't know. I have a hard time committing to that. I'll be honest with you. If I'm a franchise, I almost would rather let a guy walk. I mean, it's got to be a guy who has that. I'd rather let him walk if you're going to want that much money. Let's see who else wants to pay you that much. Zion is a great talent, but Bradley Beal, I think, is a more easy question because I think Zion does have more potential than Bradley Beal. But it brings your point, Tommy. I know we're kind of on 2 sides of the spectrum, but it's if a guy wants that much money and if you don't think he's worth it, I don't know. I don't know. I'm okay with letting a guy walk in that scenario. Rebuild and restart with better guys. And I don't know. It just rubs me wrong that a guy who's played 85 games could get this much of a long-term commitment. It's insane. Insane. I don't care how good he is. It's insane.
No, I get you. It's just, that's, like I said, that's the reality of the modern NBA. Another guy with some injury concerns. He's had a scope on his knee. Zach LaVine signing a 5-year deal, max deal worth about $215 million to remain with the Chicago Bulls. Obviously, I think this is a big win for Zach LaVine, somebody who had to play under a restricted franchise offer. Basically, previous regime for the Bulls said, Zach LaVine, you're a restricted free agent. Go out, see whatever offers you get, and then we'll match. Instead of proactively going to him and saying, this is how much we value you. This regime of Arturas Karnisovas as the president and Mark Eversley as the GM said, Zach, we are going to give you everything that you have earned basically for this deal. Good move for the Bulls. Good move for LaVine. What are your thoughts on it?
This one I'm very torn on. So I'm very torn on this one. I will say this: I would not pay a penny more than what they paid him. I would love to pay a few.
Well, you
pennies
couldn't if you wanted
less,
to.
but it's just, it's Zach LaVine is young. He's got upside. I think he's a little bit different than Bradley Beal in that Bradley Beal is a little bit older. I think he's a little bit different than Zion in that he has been available for Chicago. So I'm a little torn here. I do think that he did have a worse year this last year compared to the year before. His points went down by 3 points. A lot of that due to DeMar DeRozan, but also his field goal and 3-point percentage did go down. So that's a little bit of a cause for concern. But 2 years ago, he shot more than 40% from three, just under 40% this year. So he's actually developed into a pretty good basketball player. He was more of a dunker when he first came into the league. Now he's a pretty good shooter. He's a guy who could also ISO, very good in transition. Obviously, that's still a big part of his game. So I'm a little torn here. I can go either way. More, I would lean, as just a general numbers scream, I would say maybe a little too much. But granted, with Tom, I have to concede at some point. Granted, with how the NBA salary caps work, I could be more okay with this deal. Again, $212.5 million is what I saw, upwards to 215. Does still sound better than 250 than the Bradley Beal deal, because I think Zach LaVine is at least as valuable as Bradley Beal, if not slightly more so, given the age and the potential to rise. Because Bradley Beal at this stage in his career is not going to get better. Zach LaVine could still get better. So I would say just because the simple fact that Bradley Beal got 250 and Zach is getting 210, 215, just because of that, I guess I'll concede and say, okay, I'm not thrilled by the deal, but I can somewhat live with it.
Sure. Well, I mean, it comes down to the fact that Zach LaVine was an unrestricted free agent. He was free to sign with anybody that he wanted to. So basically, the Bulls had to come correct on this one and say, we're going to give you the most years, the most money that we possibly can. And if you still want to walk away from all that, there's literally nothing that we as a franchise can do. They definitely ran the risk of, if they came in and said, hey, we're only going to do 200 million, we're going to leave off the extra however many, that there could be a perceived disrespect there, and or LaVine saying, well, then I'll just go take someone else's money, hit free agency again 1 year sooner, or get to another extension 1 year sooner, and you guys get nothing for me. So Bulls basically were in this position, but I think it works out really, really well for both, where LaVine gets, everything that he's perceived as, earning over the course of his career, and the Bulls get to hang on to a still pretty young star. I mean, he's basketball old just because he's been in the NBA since, he's 19. He's like already in year 8 or 9 of his NBA career.
But he's still young.
So still young, but definitely a lot of wear and tear on his knees, is evidenced by multiple knee operations, both major and minor. So I think good move for both teams. And it's definitely the sort of thing where both got what they needed out of this arrangement. And then the last one,
your favorite,
that he was up for an extension, but certainly happy to see Damian Lillard.
Yeah.
2 years and $122 million to extend with the Blazers, saying that it means more if he's able to win a title in Portland with the Trailblazers.
With the cash.
That too. But
it could mean more for 2 years and 100 million, but it's got to be 122, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. So Tom, I feel like the whole salary thing is out of control in the NBA. However, in this case, obviously worth it for Damian Lillard. I think he's going to be the highest paid player in the NBA next year. He's not the best player in the league. However, Damian Lillard, when healthy, is a top 10 player in the league. Granted, near the bottom of the top 10, but we've seen what he can do. He is a legitimate first-tier star. I would say at the bottom of the first tier, but he's knocking on that door. I would be hard-pressed to find 10 players in the league who are better than him. So like with Jokic and Lillard, we're talking about guys who are top 5, top 10 players, guys that are essentially completely the face of the franchise. The franchise would be nowhere without him. Guys that have actually done a lot for your franchise. I know the Blazers haven't won a ring. I know the Nuggets haven't won a ring, but these guys have gotten their teams deep in the playoffs. They've brought fans in the seats. They've had exciting moments, exciting plays. And we're talking about a guy who is a proven player. You know what you're going to get with Damian Lillard. You're going to get an all-NBA guy, consistently a top 10 player in the league. We don't get that consistently with Bradley Beal. He's up and down. He's had injuries. Obviously, Zach LaVine had injuries. Zion had injuries up to wazoo. Jalen Brunson is a role player. So that's where I draw the line. I get how the system works, but when we're talking about guys that you can't let go, and a guy that really has been really close to leaving Portland on multiple occasions, a lot of rumors about him getting traded, about not re-signing. There's been a lot of rumors about Dame leaving Portland. I think this is the guy that they had to hang on to. Like, Jokic and Lillard are first-tier guys that you can't lose. They're the face of your franchise. I get it. Zion kind of is potentially that. I get it. Bradley Beal, granted for the Wizards, is kind of that. But those aren't guys that you think of like big names. Like, it's just a different atmosphere. They're more marketable, and they're just better basketball players. So when you say, like, can you let a guy walk? Would I let a lot of those other guys walk? I would. Would I let Lillard or Jokic walk? I wouldn't. So even though those guys are getting paid the most per year compared to these other guys, they've earned it and they deserve it. Obviously, ideally, it's a little bit less for Portland, but it is a win-win. Obviously, Lillard, the bigger winner here, though, with the fat money.
Absolutely. And then just throwing a couple quick ones in that I looked up as well.
Sure.
Both Devin Booker, Karl Anthony Towns agreed on pretty much identical deals, 4 years, $224 million to stay with the Suns and Timberwolves, respectively. And then Grizzlies star Ja Morant agreeing to the rookie extension worth up to 226. So kind of on a similar track as Zion Williamson. Pretty much all run-of-the-mill good moves for both player and teams in those situations, given where they're headed, correct?
Yeah. Again, I think Ja of those three guys is the best overall player. He's the one who I would give money to. Devin Booker and Karl Anthony Towns, great talents. I know Booker did take the Suns to the finals, but I also think CP3 was such a big part of that. I guess I'm on that stage where Booker and Towns, to me, like, I don't know if they're indispensable. Like, have they done as much for that franchise? Because Devin Booker, he's pretty good, but he's inconsistent. So that is definitely an issue with him. I guess they're okay. I'm not blown away. Let me say this. If I'm the T-Wolves and Suns, like, again, same deal. First-year star. I think Ja Morant is a first-year star. I think Devin Booker is a second-tier star, and Karl Anthony Towns is a second to third-tier star. So I get it, because you got to pay your guys. It makes sense, but I'm not necessarily thrilled unless I'm the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies, I got to be happy with Ja. But if I'm the Suns or T-Wolves, I'm like, okay, I had to pay him. But I'm not thinking in my head, like, let's just say Durant doesn't go to Phoenix. CP3, gets older and older and worse. Is Devin Booker good enough to win a championship as the clear number one player on a team? I don't think so. I think Devin Booker is more, a championship piece as a number two guy. And him and CP3, obviously Booker scored more points, but you look at the value, they were kind of like a 1-1A guy. They complement each other. But Booker wasn't the clear number one player on the Suns the last two seasons. And he can only win a ring if he's either like a 1-1A guy or a clear number two option. Because I don't see Booker as a guy that I think can win the championship unless he has insane role players and everything lines up right. But on paper, he's, to me, a second-tier star, not a first-tier star. That's just my thought.
Well, and if Phoenix ends up having to go that route where CP3 is retiring or whatever, Now you've got Devin Booker that you can offer up in a trade, and what in a couple of years is going to look more like a deal. Exactly.
Are we going to rebuild?
Possibly.
I mean, they were just in the championship, best record in the West. You can't rebuild.
Well, I mean, they're not gonna rebuild like immediately, but that could end up being something that they have to face over the next couple of years. We'll see. Obviously, with DeAndre Ayton as a restricted free agent, there could be some movement potentially, like you said, with Kevin Durant there. So we'll be monitoring that and keeping an eye on that as we get farther along in the summer and start approaching NBA season, which I believe camps start opening up in late September, early October. But going to the NFL,
Tom,
been mostly quiet. Go ahead.
One small thing I'll say this: Chet Holmgren is proving me wrong, looking great in the summer league. That's all. Go ahead to the NFL.
That's really, really early returns. So we'll give him the rookie season, but yeah. As a scrawny guy, I am going hard for Chet Holmgren to be as successful as he can possibly be in the NBA. Yep. In the NFL, we have some minor news. Baker Mayfield traded to the Carolina Panthers for a conditional 5th, could be a 4th round pick. I think we already know what the answer is as far as is this good for Cleveland, but is it good for Carolina?
Yeah, I think it's terrible for Cleveland. Obviously, they don't even. I think Jacoby Brissett, I think, is going to be the starter next year this year, because Watson's probably not going to play it down, nor should he, quite honestly. I still don't get how they gave him so much guaranteed money and how they mistreated Mayfield. They could have been honest with them, and they weren't. A lot of shady stuff there. As far as the Panthers, here's what I think of. I mean, I think of the Watson situation. Most guaranteed money ever was outrageous. They could have got him for less. Here's what this trade is. Cleveland Browns have agreed to trade quarterback Baker Mayfield to the Carolina Panthers for a 2024 conditional draft pick. The Panthers will pay $4.85 million of Mayfield's salary, while the Browns will pay $10.5 million. So we're going to get paid, again, different NBA guys get paid more than NFL. I know that, but we got Baker Mayfield, who is at the level of a Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal is going to be out there making $50 million. Baker's making 15, and you got to pay just 5 of it. They got a great deal. The Browns are paying for most of this contract. I mean, make this make sense. The Browns are going to pay 2/3 of this guy's contract so we can go and beat him week 1 of the regular season. Make it make sense. I mean, it's outrageous. Mayfield, the former number 1 overall pick. Take a look at his season 2 years ago. I know this last season he was bad, but he played hurt the whole season. It is very hard to play injured in the NFL, especially in that great division. Steelers defenses, they're pretty good. Ravens known to be hard hitting. Really good division with the Bengals as well. So I know it sounds like you're making excuses, but literally Mayfield couldn't throw last year. In the NFL, Tom, what is considered the magic turnaround year for a quarterback? Year 3. 2 years ago was Mayfield's 3rd year. 26 touchdown passes, 8 interceptions, 11-5 record. Took the Browns past the Steelers in a monumental playoff win. He was a very solid quarterback. I think if you look at Mayfield 2 years ago, probably just outside the top 10, but fair to say he's at worst around 15th. So we're talking about an average starter to maybe slightly above average is what you would expect with Baker Mayfield. The Carolina Panthers never have that. I mean, they had it with Cam Newton when he was an MVP level quarterback, but outside of Cam Newton, which has been like 6, 7, 8 years since he was actually at that level. I know they brought him back, but they brought back a lesser Cam Newton. This is going to be the best quarterback for the Panthers. I think he's going to be the starter. He's clearly better than Sam Darnold. I think it's a great move for the Panthers. It's a low risk, potentially high reward. 1 year left on his contract. They can reevaluate how it goes next year. But as far as Baker Mayfield, at best, he's a very good quarterback. At worst, he's an average quarterback. The Panthers are a below average team. If they can get an average quarterback, that is definitely success for them. They do have some solid receivers, not amazing, but DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, those guys haven't had a quarterback their entire career. Getting a somewhat decent quarterback should make them better. So absolutely fantastic deal for the Panthers. The Browns, I don't know what they're doing. The Browns are going to brown. It is just Wow. Think about this. Like, I get it that a lot of it is the run game. That is why the Browns have been okay the last few years. But think about this from an outsider's perspective. What do we value in the quarterback? We value playoff wins and beating your rival. We're like basically one football season removed from Baker Mayfield getting a 3-to-1 touchdown interception ratio and beating your biggest rival in the playoffs, which you never beat the Steelers. They never beat the Steelers. So I felt that they should have actually given Baker Mayfield one more season and then reevaluated. And if you're going to trade him, I get his contract is higher, but you're essentially paying for 2/3 of his contract. I don't know. Like, seems like they just did not make a good deal.
Well, I mean, it was one of those things where, and this is the fallout from the Deshaun Watson trade, where we saw not one but two franchises have quarterback changes because they were pursuing him. Keep in mind, Matt Ryan wasn't going to ask out of Atlanta until news came out that Atlanta was looking into pursuing Deshaun Watson. And basically Matt Ryan said, you know what? I don't really need to be here anymore. And this is how he ends up in Indianapolis for the upcoming season. Same thing happened
for him
with Cleveland, where Baker Mayfield basically said, hey, like I had, just like you're saying, last season, I had a really good year. This year, I played hurt all season long trying to get us to the playoffs as best I could. And then this is what you're going to go and do. I know there was some friction with Odell Beckham Jr., but
they
traded Odell to LA, where he ended up winning a Super Bowl. So that worked out for him. I mean, obviously, awful trade for the Browns. They were on the hook for the money anyway. So the fact that they're able to free up $8 million works out for them. I mean, they're only guaranteeing $1 million to Deshaun Watson, because then if he's suspended this year, he's not going to lose all that much in penalties to the NFL. But good move for Carolina. I'll just be like honest with it. I'm hoping that Sam Darnold is able to beat Baker Mayfield and keep this job, because I co-manage a dynasty fantasy football team, and I have Sam Darnold as the second quarterback on the team. Joe Burrow's the first, is really, really nice, but Sam Darnold's the second. So we want him to do
your toast
well. We want him. I want him to do well.
He's not going to win the job.
It's an open competition. There will not be a revenge game between Baker Mayfield and the Browns on week 1 of the NFL season, because Sam Darnold will be under center for all 17 games.
Is that your heart or your head speaking?
Oh, it's definitely desperation. 100% white knuckle desperation.
Oh my gosh.
This got to be the starting quarterback for the Carolina Panthers. Things don't look great. So, yeah, that's about all I have to say about that for the NFL. Let's move on to Major League Baseball. So we've got kind of some interesting developments that have kind of come up. I know we did our preseason picks for, say, MVP, Cy Young. And I know I have my picks on here. I don't think any of them actually are lining up with where I currently am for any of the awards. So let's start off. In the American League, I think we're going to have the greatest consensus, or greatest chance for consensus here. My preseason MVP pick was Mike Trout. I'm going with Aaron Judge. All rise. This man has hit 30 home runs in 83 games, has somewhat of an outside chance of being able to get to 60 in what is his free agent year. So this is just going to be absolutely crazy. We will see the biggest contract ever handed out in Major League Baseball history. He's absolutely been tearing the cover off the ball. I get that, metric wise, he might not have the best side metrics as far as like defense and wins above replacement and everything. I think he's like third in the AL in wins above replacement. But baseball is still a sport that when you have somebody doing a incredible thing with counting stats, this is how we get Miguel Cabrera in his Triple Crown year over a Mike Trout as far as MVP goes. I think we're going to be seeing Aaron Judge, at least as the first half MVP, if not the full season MVP.
Tom, all that I'm learning today, and I mean, I've already known this, but it just further reinforces it. I am jealous that I was not blessed with the incredible talent to be a professional athlete. My goodness, these guys and their money. Ironically, the NFL players probably get paid, the least, comparatively speaking, to basketball And baseball, obviously, that has to do with roster sizes, less games, etc. But you would think NFL is king. NFL players should make more. But these NBA and MLB guys, they're the ones really raking. So, but as far as MVP, I am actually very torn on this one. I know you said there's a lot of consensus. I think hands down, Aaron Judge is going to win the MVP. I will be shocked if he doesn't. However, so here's the deal. Aaron Judge has 30 home runs. It's the most home runs in the majors. He's hitting 283, which is pretty good as far as average. He's a fantastic player. He's without question the best hitter in baseball. I don't even care about defense. I think he's a better defender than he's given credit for. But you know how I feel. Offense is way more important than defense. He is the best position player in baseball by a mile. There's no one even close to what Aaron Judge is doing. However, who's truly the most valuable player versus who's going to win it? Like Judge also plays on the team with the best record. He's got the best numbers. But Ohtani, to me, is the best, most valuable player in the NBA. This is kind of like all those years where, you can't win MVP every year. Like, I think LeBron for the longest time was, and some could argue maybe still is, but clearly for the span of about 7 or 8 years, there were some guys that were close, but LeBron was the best player in the NBA. And he wasn't winning MVP every year, but he was known as the best player in the NBA. Like Leo Messi for me in soccer. Best player in soccer for so many years. This last year is maybe the first year in the last 15 years where I could say that maybe he wasn't the best. And you could still make a case for him. Yeah, Ronaldo's there, whatever. But we're not going to get into a whole thing like that. But there's certain guys that are the best players in the game. And I think Ohtani is that. I think it hurts him that he plays on a terrible team. But you see the records that he's had, like when he pitches versus when he doesn't pitch, the records are just outrageous. Judge is a better hitter. Judge has 11 more home runs, 11 more RBI. He's actually got a better batting average by more than 20 points than Ohtani. However, Ohtani still has a lot of home runs, a lot of RBIs, and he's 8-4 with a 2.44 ERA, struck out 111 batters in just 81 innings, and his stats were actually worse. He started off pretty bad the first few weeks. He was also hurt a little bit early in the season. So if you look at what he's done after that, the last couple months, he's been maybe the best pitcher in baseball. I know that record doesn't show it because he plays on the Angels. And baseball is a crazy sport because if you look at the betting odds, Ohtani is a distant second for MVP. Mike Trout is a distant third. Aaron Judge is, by far the best. But according to the betting odds right now, the Angels have the number 2 MVP guy and the number 3 MVP guy, and they're well below 500, won't be making the playoffs, won't be sniffing anything. So it's a great debate. I'll be honest, I wouldn't be upset if Aaron Judge won.
Sure.
I think there's great arguments. Aaron Judge is certainly going to win. But just to me, the most valuable player in baseball, given with what he does on the mound and, at the plate, has to be Ohtani.
Absolutely. There's a reason why the word unicorn is not used in any real form of hyperbole with him, because nobody is as good at both parts of the game as Ohtani is. Perhaps not ever, really, because I don't even think, like with Babe Ruth, like he was like an outstanding hitter.
Time.
Right. So he
did a little bit.
Incredible.
It's wild.
Incredible what he's doing. Yeah, Ohtani, Trout, Judge, like I'd be good with any of those guys as MVP candidates in the American League. Going to be a lot of fun. I mean, Yordan Alvarez for Houston probably would have been in that conversation, but I know he has a hand injury, so he's going to be out for a while. Maybe Rafael Devers out of Boston if they continue to do well. So definitely going to be a fun race to watch there. Over in the National League, this isn't panning out so well. I should have stayed away from good player on bad team. I had Juan Soto preseason, but if you look at basically the hitting categories, you go to baseballreference.com like I like to do for this sort of thing. And if you just go across the board, WAR among position players, number 1, Paul Goldschmidt. Offensive WAR, Paul Goldschmidt. On base plus slugging, Goldschmidt. Slugging, on base, batting average. Where else is he? I think total bases, hits, all Paul Goldschmidt. To my mind, first baseman for the St. Louis Cardinals, is the MVP at the halfway point in the National League, with a good chance of staying in that spot all year long.
Yeah, Goldschmidt is the betting favorite, but I'm going to be contrarian again.
Sure.
So here's the deal, Tom. A lot of stats that are great, and obviously batting average, on base, all that matters. However, I look at it like, what is the most important stat to me in baseball? Guess what I think the most important stat is as far as hitters go.
As far as hitters go, is it weighted runs created plus?
Nope.
On base percentage?
Nope.
Well, then what is it?
RBI. Those are runs you actually bat in, runs you contribute. I love the RBI. So that is why I'm going with Pete Alonso. He has the most RBI in all of baseball. There's different metrics you can have. Obviously, it depends on who's on base, who's where. But
yes,
we have Alonso has the most home runs and the most RBIs. Compared to Goldschmidt, he's let's see, 7th in the NL in home runs. Goldschmidt is 4th in RBI. Alonso has 23 homers and 72 RBI to lead the majors. So Alonso's coming up clutch when he has to. He's hitting the ball out of the park at a higher clip than Goldschmidt. Plays on a better team. Pete Alonso is a big threat at the plate. Very close between those two guys. But I got to play contrarian. I'm going to go Pete Alonso as my midseason MVP. Love it. Stirring the pot,
RBIs
baby.
are a function of your teammates on base and where you are in the lineup.
It's a function of being clutch.
It's dependent on other people more so than it is yourself necessarily.
Well, maybe Goldschmidt could hit the ball out of the park more than Alonso and get himself some extra RBIs, because my boy Pete's got 4 more homers than Paul Goldschmidt. It's close. I see what you're saying, but I think Alonso has delivered in the clutch so many times, actually batting in runs for his team. I mean, you could argue the same case in soccer. It's like, well, if you get more chances to score a goal, you're going to score more goals.
Right.
But you also got to take advantage of whatever chances you have. So, Goldschmidt has some, Tommy Edman gets on base for him. So he's had opportunities as well. It's very close, but Pete Alonso, I think, is slugging like crazy. Loving Pete Alonso.
All right, I guess you can love Pete Alonso. Going to Cy Young Award, I think National League, maybe here we'll have consensus. This is a bit of a throwback. No, you're not going to go with Sandy Alcantara?
Absolutely not.
Oh, he's been throwing like 7 and 8 and 9 innings. He's been pitching like, I don't know, the guys used to pitch 10, 15 years ago. I already sound really old when I say that sort of thing. I like the way that he's been pitching. I like what he's been doing. Give me Sandy Alcantara, the highest WAR amongst pitchers, most innings pitched. He's been absolutely outstanding for Miami. He's thrown 12 more innings than anyone else in the National League at this point, which, availability is kind of a function of usefulness for a team. Not burning out bullpen arms. He's there taking the ball every 5th day and taking it deep into games in the way that people just don't do anymore. So Sandy Alcantara is my Cy Young. I thought we might have had consensus here, but go with your pick.
It's close. It's very close.
Sure.
And it's a tough one, but my favorite stat in baseball, forget the RBI. I wanted to rob you up there. My actual favorite stat in baseball is ERA. I love earned run average, and Alcantara's got a fantastic one. He's got the tied for the second best ERA in the MLB. However, the best ERA in the MLB is Tony Gonsolin. He's been fantastic for the Dodgers. 1.62 ERA. He's got the lowest walks, hits, and innings pitched, the whip, best in the baseball. So Tony Gonsolin's the hardest guy to get on base against, hardest guy to score against. He's 11-0, hasn't even lost a game. So Gonsolin, to me, maybe hasn't pitched as many innings, but
not even close.
But he has been killing it with the earned run average. I actually blame his manager for not getting him more innings pitched, because when Gonsolin's been on the mound, he's been great. I can make a case for Alcantara. I have it written down here, virtual tie. I do want to mess with you, but I originally had Alcantara.
Yeah.
But then I looked at Gonsolin's ERA and I was like, what's the innings pitch difference? What's the innings pitch?
Gonsolin has thrown 88.2. Alcantara has thrown 130.1. The difference is about an inning and a half to an inning and 3/4 per outing, per start.
Okay. So, I mean, that's a great debate.
Mm-hmm. It's a little more like new front office metric of like, the numbers are basically once you see a lineup for a third time, that's when ERA and all those other numbers start to spike. So basically what the Dodgers are saying is our guy is going to see a lineup 2 times and 2 times only. Whereas Miami, a team that's not necessarily competing in the way that the Dodgers are, is saying, hey, we've got a guy, we're just going to let him throw until he doesn't want to throw anymore.
Yeah. And that's where it's hard to say that, you know, it's tough because you're right. It's possible if Gonsolin was throwing more, his ERA would go up. I don't know that it's going to go up astronomically. Obviously, I think he's a better option than whoever they're bringing out of the pen. So this is one of those where it's like, it's different. It's different. I like the ERA. I don't know. You might sell me on this one with Alcantara on the innings pitched. I originally had Alcantara written down. Then I had Ty written down. And then I'm like, well, Tom's going to go with Alcantara. So I'm going to mix it up and go with Gonsolin. But they've both been great. I wish we could see Gonsolin pitching more so we can get better stats. But Sandy Alcantara is the clear favorite. He's going to win it. I'm just trying to, throw contrarian fights into this. But Gonsolin, 1.62 ERA is fantastic. So
absolutely,
great debate. I'll give you Sandy. I'll bend here. I'll give you Sandy. That innings pitched is impressive.
It's a long season. I think that's something that we'll see if he's able to keep up the pace because everybody goes through a dead arm period at some point. So he definitely could regress to the mean, a phrase I haven't gotten to use in a couple of weeks, which is kind of nice.
Good.
So
welcome back.
In the American League, now I think we'll have legit consensus because I looked at this. I looked at the ERA. He's at the top. Shane McClanahan for the Tampa Bay Rays. He's atop in a lot of the metrics that I like as well in terms of wins above replacement for pitching. His whip is really, really good. He gives up not a lot of hits per 9 innings. And of course, that ERA, that earned run average that you love so much. So I think we're going to share this one with Shane McClanahan being the AL Cy Young for the first half. Possibly late into the season, we'll see how Tampa Bay does and how he does the rest of the year. Because I think this is a bit of an outlier for him.
We have done it. Consensus. Definitely McClanahan. Like you mentioned, 1.73 ERA, best in the American League. He's 9-3. Verlander's the only other guy competing against him right now. Actually, if you look at the betting odds, it's plus 250 for McClanahan, plus 260 for Verlander. But I think a lot of that is due to a lot of folks betting on, him fading, Verlander maintaining, because we've seen Verlander do this before. So, it's crazy because I looked up some highlights of him because I wanted to see him pitch. I haven't seen him pitch that much. He is incredibly good. He's a left-handed pitcher who throws like 98 miles per hour. That is crazy impressive. So he's got great off-speed stuff. He is definitely the midseason AL MVP. And Tom, I'll tell you this, Alcantara 1.73, McClanahan 1.73, Tony Gonsolin 1.62. I guess 6.2 and 7.3 is not that big of a difference, even though Gonsolin's got the best. We'll go Alcantara in the NL. Then I'll go McClanahan in the AL with the 1.73. I'll say 1.73 and 2.0, though, is a significant enough difference.
Yes.
Verlander at the 2.00 is the second guy in the American League. I actually was part of what is it called? The Keeper Fantasy Baseball League that just folded this last year. Folded. Jerry, actually, the guy who plays in our fantasy football league, he's the owner of the league. And I had kept Verlander every season on my team. And there was one year, Tom, where I think it's like a 10 or 12 person league, but I think it was like 6 make the playoffs. I was the 6th seed. And I should have been better because I had injuries, but I went all the way to the championship game. Jerry was the 1 seed. I upset him in the semifinals. I beat him by 1 point. Went on to get crushed in the final, but I got like a decent amount of money because the difference between like second and third was pretty substantial in the payouts.
Mhm.
And it was because of Verlander. That's the one guy that I kept all these years. Finally, last year, I let him go because he got hurt. Because you can drop, I think, 3 guys every season. You have to hang on to 3 guys that you drafted the year before. And this league's been going on for like 5 years. So I had Verlander like every season, and he was consistent for me year in, year out. And I felt so bad dropping him. And now that the league folded, I feel better because otherwise I would have been kicking myself for this year's fantasy season with what Verlander is doing. So it'll be a great race. I guess we agree on the Cy Youngs.
Yeah. Now, if you're looking like long-term play, like you were saying, for full year Cy Young, maybe go with Verlander, given that McClanahan, this is his second year in the bigs. Last year, I think he threw like 120 something innings. He's already at 107, give or take, for this season. So we'll see if he's able to keep up.
Plus 260 on Verlander could be a good investment.
That wouldn't be the worst thing. I mean, it's a down year for Garrett Cole, and I don't know if like McClanahan or Alek Manoah are going to be able to maintain at their current pace, but we'll see. So that wraps it for the individual awards. We got 2 more quick things. Who's been the most surprising team, and then Yankees or Field for World Series?
Yeah, most surprising team in a good way is actually, and this is a team that probably won't make the playoffs, but I'll say it's been a really pleasant surprise. The Baltimore Orioles. They are 43-44 this year. They were 52 and 110 last year, tied for the worst record in baseball. They have almost reached their win total at the All-Star break. Almost reached their win total at the All-Star break. So really good season. They play in the best division in baseball. I know the Rays are down a little bit this year. The Blue Jays, maybe not quite where they were expected to be, but really good teams. I mean, Red Sox currently in the first wild card position, the Rays in the second wild card position. So we could have 3 playoff teams out of that division, which I predicted, by the way. I had Yankees, Rays, Blue Jays. Looks like Red Sox right now are the team. Imagine how much better they would be if they didn't play in that division. I know they have Ryan Mountcastle, a great young player. They've got some good pieces. So maybe it's not like shocking, but I would say Baltimore has been so bad the last few years. A pleasant surprise in a good way. Most surprising team in a bad way. White Sox, Tom, I'm sorry to do it to you.
No,
I believe
it's fair.
41-44. I think they're about to lose now and be.
They already did.
Already lost. All right, 41-45. They are going to win tonight, though. They are going to win tonight because we'll have that in betting locks of the week. So stay tuned to that. So I'll take your surprises. Then I'll have one note here too. So I didn't put this in the rundown. I could have. I probably should have. But 2 quick things before we get into the Yankees. I'll get your takes on surprising teams, but this also transitions into this. Biggest all-star snub for me, Dylan Cease of the White Sox. 7-4 record. Let me pull it up here on Locks of the Week. I have it in my statistics. 2.45 ERA. I am shocked how he didn't make the all-star team for the White Sox. That was a shocker. And shout out to the MLB for letting Pujols and Cabrera in the all-star game as legacy selections. I believe their last seasons this year for those 2 legends. Pujols actually in the home run derby. That field isn't fully set. I do think Pete Alonso's going to win. So real quick, maybe if you have a snub for me and your take on surprising teams and home run derby, because I like Alonso to 3-peat.
Yeah, not really a whole lot of surprise out of the National League. As far as that goes, basically all the teams I thought preseason that would be in the playoffs are either winning their division or currently sitting
Mets
in the wild card spots. You said it, with the Chicago White Sox being a surprising team. I know I mentioned preseason that they were kind of like the prohibitive favorite, but to watch out for Detroit. Detroit's been terrible. It's the Twins really that were the team to overtake the White Sox as far as being their presumptive favorite. But in a good way, New York Yankees. I mean, coming into the season, I don't recall what you guys had as far as you and Drew picking your division winners, but looking over my notes, I didn't even have the Yankees in the playoffs. And the big thing
I
being
did.
like, yeah, they have a great lineup, but what's their pitching situation going to be? Garrett Cole has not been outstanding this season, and yet the Yankees are incredible with their rotation. Jordan Montgomery, Nestor Cortez
Speaking of a Cy
showing
Young
up.
potential,
Exactly. Lots of, just great talent all up and down that New York Yankees team where
Severino as well.
certainly they're just running away and kind of leaning or prompting into this question of New York or the field. I personally am going to take the field. I mean, there's still the LA Dodgers that are amazing. You still have teams like the Houston Astros out of the American League are still really, really good. And even like you were saying, within that division, Boston, Tampa, Toronto, if they're able to get into the wild card situation as well, certainly threatening teams in the American League. And we talked about it a couple of weeks back. There is a big difference between being the best regular season team in baseball and winning the World Series. Once you get into the playoffs, you're playing in a series of, it's going from 3 to 5 to 7 game series where you just have to be the best team, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 5, 4 out of 7. Not necessarily over the large sample size that is a full 162. So at this point, I would still take the field. Even when we get to the playoffs, I would take field over any given team just because in baseball, it is so unpredictable who's going to be able to come out and win. I mean, Braves won last year as an 88 win team. They won the World Series, certainly not having the best record. So I'll take field over Yankees.
So typically taking the field is the right strategy to go. But I look at very rarely the team with the best record does win, but you look at modern years, the teams with the best records that did win, it was the 2016 Cubs and then the Dodgers from 2 years ago. And I feel like those were teams that on paper, at least, obviously the Cubs barely won that World Series. They had to come back from 3-1, all sorts of drama, but on paper, those teams were so much better than the rest. I would say the Dodgers last year, again, best team on paper, but they had a lot of injuries last year. So they weren't so far ahead of everyone else. So this is a 50-50 question. They could totally go either way. But I'm going to take the Yankees because they're healthy right now. The Yankees were not healthy last year, and there are just so many guys that could hurt you in that lineup. The probability of a guy having a bad series can happen, but we have Judge, Stanton, Rizzo, Gleyber Torres, DJ LeMahieu, Joey Gallo, Matt Carpenter. Where does this guy come out of?
Sure.
He was like dead and he's awoken from the dead. I mean, guy looks like prime Cardinals Matt Carpenter, loving that short porch in right field, taking advantage for the Yankees. I mean, and then you look at their pitching staff. It's crazy. You mentioned Garrett Cole. Again, doing very good, but not as good as he's done. He's only going to get better. Nestor Cortez, a guy that maybe we should have talked about in the Cy Young race and didn't. Luis Severino, Jordan Montgomery. They got a great bullpen. Aroldis Chapman, I think lost his closer job, and he's been hurt, not pitching well. They get him figured out. That's like adding an extra free agent piece to a dominant team. What's great about them is Stanton and Judge are both great at going opposite field. And then Rizzo, Carpenter, Gallo, they've got all these left-handed hitters in the right ballpark. They're going to get home field advantage. They'll have more games in Yankee Stadium where they can take advantage of that. So obviously, like you said, any given year, the field typically is the advice to go with. However, I think we do have, I don't know if I want to say, I think it's fair to say on paper, one of the best baseball teams ever. I think obviously the Yankees in the 20s or whatever can beat them. I think, there's been a few teams. I'm not saying top 2 or 3, but I would argue for sure this Yankees team right now on paper, and maybe you can disagree with me, and I haven't looked every season in baseball history, but it's got to be a top 10 best team of all time. I think that's how good this team is over 162 games. So I'll trust a team that is one of the all-time great teams to come up clutch enough in a series. I'll take the Yankees over the field. I will not be mortgaging anything though for that one.
Not.
No mortgage bets on teams versus the field in the playoffs.
Absolutely. No, that whole best team of all time, that's a that's a lot of research across a lot of areas that has to go into that. And
But my gut tells me, though, they're top 10, though.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think you'd be, yeah, probably sounds fair, just like off the top of my head.
Sure.
Doing some digging might change that opinion, but off the face of it, I'm not going to bat an eyelash at that whatsoever. Okay, we're going to get into a common segment, Wimbledon. Obviously, I'll let you cover, give the recap on what happened, and then I'll weigh in a little bit in terms of a couple of the heavyweight titans, some of the greats that the game has ever seen. But I'll let you just run through women's, men's side, how everything played out for I believe, first-time champion and also a 21st-time champion.
Very different, right? So really crazy. So, by the way, Tom, I'll say this. I woke up on Monday morning a little bit sad. I'll be honest. I have watched Wimbledon the last 2 weeks like crazy. I absolutely love tennis. You know this. It's in a 4-way tie for my favorite sports: tennis, soccer, football, basketball. I love every sport. But those are my 4 favorites. As you see, Roger Federer, my second favorite athlete. Leo Messi, my favorite. Love Wimbledon. It's one of those things where, I sleep in and, I work a night job. I work a sports show, hosting a sports podcast. Lost my voice last night. Hopefully I'm not losing it right now. 4 hours on the air last night, selling sports memorabilia. But typically during the day, sometimes I wake up and I wonder, what am I going to do before work? Sometimes there's nothing to do. Wimbledon has provided me the ability to watch something, to do something at the highest level. And the Wimbledon tournament was fantastic. A lot of upsets on both sides. I'll run through the women's side real quickly because then I do want to get into the legacy talk on the men's side that's more interesting. So Elena Rybakina, I looked this up. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. First player from Kazakhstan to win a Grand Slam. Ans Jabeur, first woman from Africa to be in a Grand Slam. So we had 2 first-time Grand Slam finalists. Elena with the huge win, got the upset over the 3 seed. She was the 17 seed, actually. So really big upset for her. Beat Simona Halep in the semis, who I'm a huge Simona Halep fan. Very powerful game. One of the, strongest players as far as power in the women's tennis game. Well-earned title for her. On the men's side, Serena Williams, by the way, did participate in Wimbledon, back for the first time in about a year since the last Wimbledon. Lost in the first round, had a heartbreaking loss, but fought hard. Sister Venus also back at Wimbledon. She played mixed doubles, I believe, with Andy Murray's brother, I think. So that, neither of them won, but it was great to see him back on the court. They also honored all the legends. Roger Federer was back and said he hoped to be back next year. So hopefully that happens. But on the men's side, the story was kind of like what goes down every major. Going in on the men's side, it's Rafa Nadal, Novak Djokovic, who's going to win between them. That's how it was trending. They both got in the semis. Nadal, unfortunately, got hurt in the quarterfinals. Abdomen pain. The guy was serving about 20, 30 miles per hour slower than he does. He faced a 24-year-old who was 11 years younger than him, who was literally typically Nadal's a pretty average speed server, but he does it with accuracy. This kid was serving some serves like 130, and Nadal can normally get up to 110, 115, 120, but because of his abdomen pain, he had some serves that were like 85 miles per hour. So it was crazy that Nadal fought through, won a 5-setter in the quarterfinals, won me some money that I bet in-game betting. Thank you, Rafa. So that was entertaining. It was just a gutsy performance, the toughest and clutchest athlete of all time, both mentally and physically. Just incredible to see him do that in the quarters. Unfortunately, he was too hurt to play in the semis. It's interesting what he said, though. He said that he didn't think he can win 2 matches in this tournament. I feel like he could have won the semifinal against Nick Kyrgios. However, I think he knew that he wasn't going to beat Novak Djokovic unless he was healthy. So Nadal withdraws from the semis. Djokovic cruises to the final, gets to play Nick Kyrgios. First time major final for him. Really not a fan of his. A lot of antics for him. No respect for the game of tennis. I don't mind the little drop shot he does, but I do mind him yelling at the fans, yelling at the chair umpire, yelling at his opponents. Not a class shown. A very talented player, but Novak Djokovic was much more composed, winning the Wimbledon final. Novak actually lost the first set like he had most of the tournament and won the last three. So that was Novak's 21st major. Nadal has 22. Federer has 20, but Federer, now in his 40s coming up here. So hasn't played in a while. So it looks like realistically it's going to go down to Djokovic or Nadal for most major titles. Who you got?
Okay, so Djokovic is actively taking himself out of a couple of tournaments because he won't get vaccinated. So he's not going to be in the US Open. I believe he's also not going to get approved for a visa to go to the Australian Open, correct? So
unless the laws change, he will not be in the next two majors.
Right. So like that in and of itself kind of says, hey, Rafa's already got the lead. And presumably Rafa will be playing in at least one more French Open, which is basically feeling like an automatic win for him at this point. So, I mean, they're roughly the same age, but it feels like Djokovic has not had to deal with as many injuries, which is why I think, okay, he can go a little bit more longevity, not just in terms of number of years, but also in greater chance of going deep into tournaments. Because like when you look at Rafael Nadal, 22-8 when he gets to finals, but when you look at previous years, he just hasn't been reaching as many finals, and understandably so, because he is a bit older of a player. So I'm going to say probably Rafa Nadal because French Open is going to be almost a guarantee win for him. And then I mean we saw him win the Australian this year. It's been a couple of years, but he won the US Open pre-pandemic in 2019. So if he can get, the French and then maybe one more over the next couple of years, I mean, we could be seeing somebody who's getting up to 25 majors, give or take. It's going to be absolutely crazy to see.
Yeah, I think that Rafa's the answer. I think this would be very interesting if Djokovic didn't withdraw in these two tournaments because Novak about 1 year younger, but it does feel like more given the injuries that you mentioned, Tom. I do agree with that point. So the three majors this year, what happened? Djokovic didn't play in the Australian Open. Nadal won. We had the French Open. Nadal won because he dominates it. We had Wimbledon. Djokovic won, and Nadal had pulled out. Nadal would have been Nadal. Djokovic would have been one of those two guys winning. They've won the vast majority of the majors over the last 5 years. Pretty much like it's barely anyone else can beat him. And quite frankly, it showed in that quarterfinal match. There's a lot of young players who are close in talent and physique, maybe a little bit lower than them. But there's a lot of guys who can push those two guys. But tennis takes an immense amount of mental concentration and clutch moments. And honestly, to be honest with you, Tom, Roger Federer is the most talented player of all time. He's actually won the most matches ever. Roger Federer should have the most majors, but even Roger in final moments is not as clutch as Nadal or Djokovic. And of the three, Nadal is actually the clutchest. He's played in the least major finals of Djokovic and Federer. But when Nadal gets there, he wins. And without Djokovic being there, I just don't see who can knock out Nadal. Here's the deal. Like, he's got a one-edge lead right now. He's got the US Open, the Australian Open coming up. He's going to win at least one of those, if not both. If he goes up 3, then he wins the French Open, which is his 4, ball game over. We won't be having this discussion. I don't know if he's going to win the next 3, but I think he should win at least the next 2, or rather 2 of the next 3 at the very least. He goes up 3. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with vaccination statuses 2 years down the road, but given with it's entirely possible that that's how the vaccination laws are going forward. It's possible that in 2 years that again, Djokovic couldn't play half the majors. So right now, I think it's definitely Rafa. I think Rafa he's just more mentally tough and clutch. He is the clutchest athlete. Tom, I watch a lot of sports. I'm a Roger Federer fan. I love Nadal. I want to not like Nadal but I respect him so much for what he does. And Nadal is incredibly talented. Don't get me wrong. Nadal is the third most talented tennis player of all time. But talent-wise, it's Federer 1, Djokovic slightly behind, Nadal slightly behind. But when it comes to that ability to find a way to win, Nadal is not number 1 all-time in tennis. He is number 1 all-time in the history of sports. Nadal can win pretty and he can win ugly. And a lot of times the all-time greats, they're used to winning pretty. Nadal can have an off match and he'll find a way to win. When it's time for a clutch point, Nadal will rise above the rest. So when I think of Grand Slam championships, I mean, I can see Novak Djokovic having a better overall record than Nadal the next few years. But Nadal is just so clutch. And if Djokovic is going to sit out a couple majors, there's no way that Nadal's not going to have the most ever. And I just think, to me, it's mind-blowing. I get it. Like, people have their own convictions. I'm not going to get in a whole big thing about vaccinations versus not. I mean, you and I know where we both feel on this. This isn't the show for that necessarily. But I will be honest. I'll say one brief thing. The fact that a player who could potentially have the most majors ever, which means a lot, could potentially be, quite frankly, throwing away his legacy over one shot is mind-blowing to me. But just mind-blowing. But that's what Djokovic has decided, and it looks like, unless the laws change, which is another debate in itself, and I'm not going to go there, but the law is the law, and right now, Djokovic does not look like he's going to get that shot, and this could have long-term effect on his legacy.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not the first time that we've seen, athletes do things outside of sports that affect them in sports. I mean, the biggest thing that comes to mind for me is Muhammad Ali not going to fight in Vietnam. Wow, I said it in a really, really different way than I ordinarily would. But not going to Vietnam. I mean, obviously, he had a reason for not doing that. At the time, was vilified for it. We've since come around to see, that he was right on that. I don't know what that means long-term for vaccination, if eventually there's going to be a, quote, right or wrong side of history. I have a strong suspicion which side that we will be on, but I've been wrong before. I just really hope I'm not wrong about this one. So, I mean, I guess if you want to give props to sticking to your convictions, cool. I kind of question the conviction, though, quite frankly. So that'll wrap it for tennis. We've got British Open for golf, or at least those who are left on the PGA Tour.
Well, everyone is in the major, actually. The Live Tour guys can play in the major, too.
Oh. Well,
which is another debate in itself. We won't go there. But it is technically, the majors are not PGA sanctioned tournaments. So those Live Golf guys are actually going to be at the majors. I believe they were in the last one. They should be again at the US Open, or British Open, excuse me.
Okay, well, in that case, who do you have as a favorite to win in this tournament? I mean, we've got our usual guys. Are you going with your usual guys, or are you going a little off the board here?
Oh, I'm going with my usual guy, and this makes me a little bit upset because my usual guy typically tends to be number 3 or 4 on the betting odds.
Oh, not this time.
But not this time. My usual guy is the favorite. Rory McIlroy, 9-1. And look, Rory McIlroy is a fantastic golfer. He hasn't won a major in quite a few years, but his performances have been so close this year that it almost feels like he's due. He finished 2nd at the Masters, 8th at the PGA, tied for 5th at the US Open, which I picked him to win the last one. So I think he's getting there. I think he's so good not to have won. I think 2014 is actually his last major that he won. I think it might have been this major, even the British Open in 2014. He's been so close. He's won the Canadian Open recently. Not a major, obviously, but I'm going to go with my guy. I've got, you've got your golf guys. You've got your Matsuyama, Morikawa. I've got Rory and Jordan Spieth. Spieth will do great. Morikawa, very clutch guy when it comes to the majors. Look for him to do great. Xander Schauffele is the second favorite. but I'm going to go with King Rory here. 9-1. I don't care. Favorite. I'll take the favorite. King Rory, baby.
It has been 30 years since an Englishman has won the British Open, Nick Faldo. So I am going to go with the Englishman, Tommy Fleetwood, to win for his home country. I have no idea if that's going to pan out. But we'll go with one of the top-ranked Englishmen to go home or to go ahead and take home the British Open on I guess home soil or something like that. I ran out of steam on that one, Kamen. Let's move on to the next segment.
Yeah, we missed Drew Brackett for the golf. He's our resident golf guy. I'm our soccer guy. He's our golf guy. I guess soccer, tennis too for me. Although Drew does like playing tennis. Drew and I used to play tennis in college. Let's just say our record was roughly 500, but when there was money on the line, I was not clutch enough.
You were not Rafa Nadal.
I was Federer. He was Nadal. I would win. I probably won more total points in our history of our matches, but Drew won the ones that counted. So,
go figure. I was witness to, I believe, one, maybe two of those, but at least one.
Probably didn't end well. I couldn't compete with the pressure of Tom there.
I'm looking at locks of the week for Drew, and actually doesn't have a pick on the British Open, which is surprising considering that I do. So I know it's been a minute. I don't know how in-depth you want to go with the recap, because I quite frankly don't even really remember how we all did.
All right. So we had a couple weeks off. We had a little illness. All is good. Tom is doing great. We had 4th of July. Yep. So obviously we didn't do a 4th of July show for the holiday. So we've missed 2 shows, which is, I believe, Tom, the first time we've ever missed back-to-back shows since we reunited this about 2 years ago. We've had a week where we've missed a show. We finally missed back-to-back shows. So a lot of these picks were so old that I almost am leaning towards giving you our records and not even recapping the picks. Okay. We were all the same. We're all 1 and 2. So we all were slightly off, but not horrible. So we were 1 and 2, Drew 1 and 2. He went with the soccer and also had, which is crazy, hockey. We still had hockey going on last time we gave locks of the week. So I'm not going to bore you with all old picks, but I'll say we were all 1 and 2, here 3 weeks ago.
Okay. So do you want me to read off the records that I have in that case, or?
Oh, I don't want to embarrass myself. I have not done as well.
We'll settle that off air. What I have currently is I've got myself at 77, 72 and 3, Drew at 75, 75 and 2. So he's even up, and we can confirm your number offline if you want to.
Oh, you know what? It's been under 500, not that far off, actually, a little bit closer than I thought, but I was co-champion last year for locks of the week. This year has not gone as well. Tom, you're going to be champion for sure, though. But I will get into Drew's picks real quickly. Drew's picks. And we are going to be, by the way, I figured, Tom, we'll be quick here. We can talk more about this off air. At this point, I'm thinking we only have about 4 shows, even if we do every show until football season. So we might as well keep the locks going with baseball. But we will restart football locks once we get into, dare I say, college football. Maybe we'll wait till NFL, but we'll be restarting pretty soon here.
Yeah, we can talk about that for sure.
We'll discuss that off air. But real quickly, I'm going to make Drew's picks. I'll read them off for you, and then we'll get into your picks. So Drew and I have a different pick this week. Cubs minus 120 money line over the Orioles tonight for Drew. And then, of course, he goes to soccer, Europa Conference League. Qualifying, B36 versus Borac Luka, under 2.5 goals. Then Champions League qualifying, Tobol versus Ferencváros, under 2.5 goals for Drew. What do you got, Tom? That's all I'll say.
I to a particular pick. I've got Orioles on the money line. I'm going opposite Drew. Orioles, minus 105, like you mentioned, one of the great surprise teams in baseball this season. Yes, they're on the road, but they're also going against the Cubs, a team that has not been particularly strong. Give me the Giants tonight. Also tonight, minus 1.5 runs. I believe they're going up against the Diamondbacks. Logan Webb starting for Arizona. And then a certain someone named Dallas Keuchel starting for the Diamondbacks. He of a 7. Hang on, I have it right here.
White Sox,
with the
White Sox.
Former White Sox in 8 starts with the White Sox this year, 32 innings, an ERA of 7.88. He has had 3 games that he has started for the Arizona Diamondbacks in which he's had better ERA, 7.16. Positively dreadful. Give me the Giants -1.5 to absolutely run away with this one. And then, of course, talked about a golf pick. Give me the Canadian Corey Connors to finish top 40 at -120.
No, I thought you were going to give like a parlay, pick the 4 favorites all to make the cut.
No, I'm not going to go with a parlay pick on that.
That didn't work out pretty good. That's not worked out well.
No, that does not. That rarely works out well. I mean, if anything, maybe I should double down with Fleetwood on one of these things. I'll think about it. I'll let you do your picks. For now, I'm sticking with Corey Connors, but I might switch over to Fleetwood.
It's funny, of all the MLB games you could pick, there's a lot of MLB games.
Sure.
We all fixated on the same game. And I do feel better that I'm with you and against Drew in this case. I've got the Orioles at +105 against the Cubs.
Oh, has it moved? Okay.
Maybe it's +105 on DraftKings. Maybe it's moved at -105 elsewhere. But regardless, roughly even money, which is pretty good investment there. Orioles at the Cubs tonight. Baltimore, just 1 game under 500. The Cubs are 18 games under 500s. Orioles are 55-32 against the spread. They've won 8 straight games. 8 straight games for Baltimore. No reason to think they can't keep rolling against a dreadful Cubs team that has played dreadfully at Wrigley Field. It almost doesn't even mean home field advantage for them. So give me the Orioles to win outright tonight. I'm going to go ahead and go with another Chicago team. We got the White Sox. White Sox, disappointing this season. One guy that hasn't been disappointing is Dylan Cease. I mentioned him as an all-star snub. White Sox -1.5 at the Indians tonight at +100. So you can make even, bet $20, win $40. That's the scenario there. Cease is 7-4 with the 2.45 ERA. Tom, in his last 8 straight starts, he's allowed 1 earned run or less. A bunch of them, no earned runs allowed. He is absolutely dealing. Connor Pillington, young pitcher for the Indians, 4.08 ERA. He has struggled lately, though. Allowed 4 runs or more in 2 of his last 4 starts. 4.66 ERA in June, coming off a tough month. White Sox win by 2 or more here in game 2 of the doubleheader. And then last but not least, I think this is just barely within the bounds we agreed to. I'll take the Astros -125 on the money line on DraftKings to win at the Angels. Luis Garcia on the mound for the Astros. Noah Syndergaard for the Angels. Pretty similar stats, the two pitchers. Garcia been slightly better. Syndergaard, not the pitcher he used to be. But, this is a tale of 2 opposite teams. Astros are an incredible team. Angels are a horrific team. They're going in opposite directions. Astros 8-2 in the last 10. Angels 2-8 in the last 10. So Houston should have no problem winning on the road, taking down the Angels tonight. So I'm going with a lot of road, I guess, slight underdogs as far as the Orioles. White Sox, I think, are a slight favorite, but with the -1.5, slight underdog. And then the Astros are a road favorite, but -125, not terrible juice, semi-terrible juice. Yeah. I think -125 is what we agreed on the cutoff. Right around I'm there. Looking forward to build on a strong finish. Locks of the week have been pretty solid over the last month. I think over 500 for me after the terrible start to my locks of the week. So looking to build strong, get momentum heading into locks of the week, season 3. Maybe going to try to dethrone the champ, Tom Castleman. You and I tied season 1. It is going to be you season 2, barring a crazy comeback from Drew. I don't know if I'm mathematically eliminated, but I got to go 3-0 a lot of weeks, and you got to go 0-3 a lot of weeks. So you are definitely in the driver's
in the
seat
driver's seat
for Locks of the Week champ.
Well, for the record, I am going to change up my golf pick. I was looking on Bovada. I'm going to stick with Tommy Fleetwood. I'm going to double down on this top 20 finish at even money.
Okay.
So if I think he's going to win, I think even money for him to finish in the top 20 is definitely in good order as well.
What is a top 10 finish for Rory? That's got to be like roughly even money. Top 10, not top 20.
10 finich, close, minus 105 on Bovada. So
that might
small amount of
that might be a good bet to put down. I'll stick with the baseball picks, but a good side bet advice could be that Rory at. My bets have been doing really well the last month. You know how a lot of times I will bet other stuff beyond the show, and I tend to do better when I'm not picking on the show. But that's how it goes sometimes.
Which is kind of more important, is it?
Yeah, if I'm wagering, yeah. But I also have known to wager some of the picks I do make on the show. So tends to even out for sure.
Exactly.
So sports trivia coming up. Sports trivia.
All right.
Last but not least.
Both of mine on the phone. Let's see. I got to scroll through here to find them.
I've got some great trivia today, Tom.
Let's see. I think, okay, so this one, I'm just not going to go with that one. Okay, so I'm going to go with one piece of trivia. And we were talking about basketball. We were talking about some max contracts. So
this is similar to my football trivia, by the way, but go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So Giannis Antetokounmpo has averaged at least 25 points per game, 10 rebounds per game, 5 assists per game, and 1 steal per game for the 4th straight season in this past year. Since the 1974-1975 season, no other player has had more than 2 such seasons, period. Can you name those 2 players?
Kareem? Okay, so sorry, give the stats one more time.
The stats. So 25 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, and 1 steal per game.
I don't know if LeBron ever got to 10 rebounds. I know he was close several times.
Yeah, he's not he's not on that list.
He would hit the other metrics. He's probably like 8-9 rebounds a bunch of seasons. All right. So not Kareem.
Feel free to play 20 questions with me if you want to narrow it down.
So 73-74, that was after Wilt left his prime. Or he might have barely been in the league. It's not Wilt Chamberlain.
Right, not Wilt.
I don't know if we would have gotten there for steals, but I'm just going to throw it out there. Well, 5 assists too, you said?
5 assists as well, yeah.
Okay, Jokic?
Jokic is one of them.
So once or twice, how much did he do that?
It just says no more than 2 such. Okay, no more than 2 such seasons. Jokic has had 2.
Okay,
one other player has had 2 seasons.
All right, so that was good. Already got one. Jokic.
Already got one.
All right, so Tim Duncan. Kevin Garnett.
I'll give you one hint. You're going to be so mad when you get this player right.
Oh no! So it's a guy I don't like. Oh no! Oh no! Oh gosh, no. Do I have to do this, Tom? It's Russell Westbrook, clearly.
Yes, it is.
It's clearly Russell Westbrook. That was the best clue you could ever give. Oh my gosh. It's terrible. Terrible.
Giannis Antetokounmpo, Nikola Jokic, and Russell Westbrook all in the same sentence. How does this make you feel?
One guy does not belong in that sentence. That's how it makes me feel. Hey, Giannis movie Rise. Check it out. I may have mentioned that last time we talked. Love the movie on Disney Plus. Absolutely fantastic movie. Really good. Love Giannis. It makes me love Giannis even more after watching the movie. If I couldn't love him enough, it's Giannis, LeBron, and Curry are my 3 NBA loves, as you know, Tom.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh, I did pretty good there. I mean, that clue was it was easy.
Yes.
It was easy. It was easy.
Because I think you honestly, because you don't like Russell Westbrook, you could have named every single player who ever played in the NBA.
I wouldn't have got it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have got it. And again, uncontested rebounds. I'm not going to talk forever about this. Assist to turnover ratio, field goal percentage. We could be here another 3 hours. I'll miss work over this. But what's your other trivia question?
The other one, it had to do with cycles in baseball, and I just found it to be interesting, but ultimately too convoluted to really be like a worthwhile trivia.
Okay. So what's the answer?
So basically it was, and this was from July 1.
Okay.
So there have been 5 cycles in baseball in the last 52 days.
Wow.
That's the shortest span for 5 cycles since there were 5 in 26 days from July 18 to August 12, 1890.
Wow.
And then it's also the first time in MLB history that there were 5 cycles before July 4th in a season. So like lots of really cool baseball information in there, but I was looking at it.
I don't know how you
couldn't
make it
really
into a
find
trivia
a way
question.
into a trivia question. It's more just like
Nolan
fun information.
Arenado was one, right?
Yeah, Arenado was one. Let's see. I think it's Jared Walsh from the Angels was one. Christian Yelich.
Yeah, Yelich. That's what I was gonna say. Yelich got one.
And then Hazen Escobar as well.
Okay. Cool.
So yeah, what do you have for trivia?
All right. So it is Contract Castleman. We talked a lot about NBA and MLB money. It was just brought to my attention earlier. I saw an article about our guy, Chase Daniel, now over $40 million.
Legend at the bank.
Legend at the bank. Go ahead.
No, go with yours, and then we'll come back to my other trivia question.
Okay.
I found the other one that I actually wanted.
All right. So more than $8 million a year for the one, the only Chase Daniel. He was, let me look this up. This is, well, I don't want to look this up. Let me do it by position real quickly.
Sure.
I had this written down, but maybe I didn't. I thought I did. But he is among the highest paid ever. I had misread something on the internet. Let's see. Highest paid quarterbacks ever. Career total earnings. Come on. Let's see where he's on this list. While I look for this information, Tom, I'm scrolling down here. The trivia question is 5 highest earners in NFL history. I'll give you 2 clues just to make it easy. I'm guessing you probably could surmise these would be the facts, but it's all quarterbacks and it's all guys we have watched. So 5 highest earners. This is total contract money, not contracts per year. Total money paid out. By the way, Chase Daniel, number 62 all-time among quarterbacks in career money. He's played 5 games as a starter, 62nd all-time in career money earned and going up.
Hey, it's a good finesse if you can get it. Backup quarterback and left-handed relief pitcher will get you paid forever. Okay, so top 5 earners.
There's one guy on this list that will surprise you. I'll say that.
All right, so I'm actually going to go. We'll see if this lines up. Is Kirk Cousins one of them?
Not Kirk Cousins.
Oh, because I know he's got like a lot of guaranteed money. Like he signed a lot of guaranteed money contracts.
So this is, total money earned. Kirk Cousins is 17th among all positions, I believe. Should be. We got some receivers in here. He's right around like 12th or 13th for quarterbacks. 17th all time in NFL money earned by Kirk Cousins.
So Patrick Mahomes.
Not Mahomes.
No. Oh, because I guess the money hasn't been paid out yet.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. I should clarify money that's been paid out.
No, you did clarify that. I just didn't put that all together in my head. So Peyton Manning.
Peyton Manning, not on this list. Peyton Manning is number 7.
Wow. Drew Brees.
Drew Brees is number 2. The guy who's 6th would also surprise you, which is crazy.
Okay,
I'll tell you this.
Brees.
Eli Manning is number 6. Earned more money than Peyton Manning in his career. $252 million for Eli Manning, and the number 6 highest paid player ever.
Same number of championships. That makes for an interesting Thanksgiving table, I'm sure.
You don't want to get me started there.
Is Tom Brady on this list? I know
Tom Brady's number 1.
Okay, he's
taking some pay cuts, but he's played 22 seasons.
Yeah,
it adds up. It adds up.
Let's see. Aaron Rodgers has been playing a while, so he should be up there.
Aaron Rodgers, number 5.
Okay, so I'm missing 2 guys right in the middle.
I think you're going to struggle with one of them. I think you're going to get the other. You may not get it right away, but the guy who's number 3, you should know. The guy who's number 4, you'll definitely need some help. There's one guy that's a surprise on this list.
Okay. Played a long time. Brett Favre. Was the money big enough? Not
money
Brett Favre.
was not big enough back then, no.
So then that would be okay.
Brett Favre is 22nd all time, by the way.
So it has to be somebody who's really, really, really recent and also kind of on the old side, not to be too blunt about it.
Sure, absolutely. You're on the right track.
Maybe like Matt Ryan.
Wow, Matt Ryan. That's the one I thought you would struggle with. 4th all time in career money earned.
It's pretty good. And then I would guess like maybe Matthew Stafford.
No.
I don't think Joe Flacco made enough money, but maybe Philip Rivers did.
You're getting warm.
Very Ben Roethlisberger.
Warm. Ben Roethlisberger. Philip Rivers, number 8. Matthew Stafford, number 9. Ben Roethlisberger, number 3. I don't have my calculator out, Tom, but I believe, again, this is of money cashed. If I'm doing this math correctly, because Brady's played 22 seasons, Matt Ryan 14, Ben Roethlisberger 18, Rodgers 17, Eli 16, Peyton Manning 18, which is crazy because Eli's made more money per year than Peyton. Yeah. But I believe the highest guy, at least in the top 10, again, money that has been cashed out on a per year basis, looks to be Matty Ice.
It's pretty good. He came in like at just toward the end of when being the first overall draft pick at quarterback got you an ungodly sum of money as a signing bonus.
Matthew Stafford and him got to be close. I got to pull up the calculator, but Matthew Stafford is up there too. Actually, I mean, who knows how long Rodgers and Manning will play, but just looking at the way contracts are going to be, I mean, Mahomes obviously is going to pass this up because he's got, a $500 million deal or something, 400 something. So Mahomes will be number 1, but Matthew Stafford, for the time being, likely to pass up Tom Brady if he keeps going in the next few years.
Absolutely,
what he's making. So,
you want to stick with a quarterback trivia question?
Hit me. I love quarterback trivia.
So, I mean, this is obviously like not a really great stat because it's really difficult to give individual wins to a player on, what is considered the ultimate team game. But Tom Brady is 2 wins away from setting the record for most playoff wins against NFC teams. Can you name who holds that current record?
Is it for quarterback?
For quarterback, yeah. It's only quarterbacks because they're the ones to whom we attribute
Brett
wins.
Favre.
It is Brett Favre. Nicely done.
Yeah.
Do you know the number?
Playoff wins. 23?
12.
Really? I knew I was guessing high. That seems pretty low, but I guess you only play like 2 or 3 playoff games in a given season.
Yeah. In order to go, if you're the number 1 seed and you go to the Super Bowl, you only get a maximum of 2 wins against the NFC.
Brady's won 7 Super Bowls.
Yep. So that's 7 right there. Yeah.
And then he
plus
won
the 3 in Tampa.
3 other games. They won 1 playoff game this last season and
plus
3 actually, right, in the NFC because they were in the wild card games. So that'd be 4.
So there's
11.
wild card. Well, okay, he won 6 Super Bowls in the AFC though.
Oh, that's right.
So that's where that number comes in.
So 10 games though?
10 games. He's tied in second place with Joe Montana and Aaron Rodgers.
By the way, that was my next guess, Joe Montana. I was actually thinking like it's either Favre or Montana, but Favre played longer, and then Montana actually played with the Chiefs for a couple of years at the end too. So or a few years, whatever it was.
That was just crazy. I saw that on Pro Football Talk, where it's just like, oh yeah, Brady could set the record for most wins against the NFC in the playoffs, despite only being in the NFC for like 2 years. It's like, what?
Well, he's two away, and
he could get there this year.
It's possible. He might tie it because, like, say the Bucks get a bye, they would have to win 2 playoff. They can win 2 at the most. If they don't get a bye, likely their team isn't as good. And I don't know if they get to the Super Bowl. So, I mean, I could see him tying it, possibly winning it. I mean, they'll win at least a playoff game. We'll see. We'll see.
Fascinating stuff in the story. I like how for trivia and for both trivias, we've touched on a couple of athletes who are near and dear to your heart. I know.
So I'll be honest with you. I don't dislike Tom Brady as much as you think. I dislike Tom Brady fans and this pedestal that they
Sure.
put him on. Obviously, Tom Brady's accomplishments speaks for themselves. Because of longevity, you can make a case for him. I mean, not make a case. He is the GOAT. But I look at other guys, like I think Mahomes is better. He's going to be better when he's done. To me, he won't get as many Super Bowls, but he'll have better cumulative stats. And I just look at Peyton Manning. I look at, maybe, I don't know about Aaron Rodgers with his attitude. Who knows? But I look at Peyton Manning, at least one that I think of that had he played on some of those teams, maybe Drew Brees as well, they would have as many rings as Brady. But that's a guessing game. I just think that Brady, there's other guys who are very close to or as good as Tom Brady. I feel like he gets put so far above everyone else. I have more of an issue with, Brady's not my favorite person, my favorite athlete, but like my dislike from Brady is not at the level of Russell Westbrook. It's more the Brady fan. Same deal with Kobe. I don't like, Kobe's not my favorite. Brady's not my favorite. I have greater dislike towards their fans than the person themselves, if that makes sense. Ronaldo, I do dislike Ronaldo. Let's be honest. Ronaldo and Westbrook is a debate for another day. But I'll just say this: my level of not liking Brady and Westbrook is not comparable. Not comparable. Westbrook is just a whole nother level. So that's just me. All right. Salute statements of the week. What do you have, Tom?
Yeah. So big news that we didn't touch on because this kind of came out a couple weeks ago is a little bit into the old news category, but definitely for me, at least, I can repurpose this into a statement.
Oh, we're going to have the same one, I think. Here we
go.
Mega
conferences, UCLA and USC leaving the Pac-12 to join the Big Ten. That being the biggest news and pretty much the biggest reason that's happening is because TV money. Big Ten is negotiating a new deal and pays out about $15 million more per year than the Pac-12 does. This coming on the heels of news from, I think it was earlier this year, I don't think it was last year, of Texas and Oklahoma getting set to join the SEC in a couple of years as well. And basically, it's very clear. This is all about money, which is why I'm more of a proponent of players getting paid, because conferences, schools are going after all these big bucks while providing really not a whole lot of compensation to the product. And it's especially ludicrous now when you consider the term of student athlete, when we're talking about a potential USC Rutgers game in the middle of the week in, say, January, as far as conference play goes for basketball, or traveling across country to be playing an in-conference football game where there are multiple time zone shifts. Players are missing multiple days of class just to accommodate travel and everything to make sure that they're ready to play the games. It's beyond parody at this point to even say like that they're legitimately students and athletes. There definitely is more of an emphasis placed on one than the other. And I'm going to borrow, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit of a blurb from a baseball writer for whom I subscribe to his newsletter, Craig Calcaterra, Cup of Coffee. And what he loosely is saying with this, and I had a similar notion of, all this money is going to get, taken up, all this greed is going to come these conferences, consume these guys into mega conferences. So where are the next steps going to be? I suspect that the next step is going to be, say, let's just group some teams along roughly geographical lines into divisions. Say maybe 10 or 12 teams, because we want to ease the cost of travel. We want to foster some regional rivalries. And, I just wonder if they're going to come up with any issues with naming these divisions, something like maybe the West Coast 12 or the Large 10. I don't know if this really has a good ring to it, but I'll workshop some ideas. I'm sure that people who are a lot smarter than I can figure it out. But my statement basically is that greed has ruined what once was a pretty fun arena for sports. Not necessarily the biggest college sport fan necessarily, but looking at regional rivalries of, smaller conferences, having a Big 10, a Big 12, having an SEC Pac-12 where all these teams face occasionally each other at large before their regular seasons or in-conference play starts. So you go from a couple of at-large kind of sort of exhibition games going into in-conference. And at the end of the year, when you have the teams that are, at their best, most battle-tested, facing each other in NCAA tournament, facing each other in bowl games. That was really, really fun. And it had its own place. It was definitely different, a different flavor of sport and competition and rivalry than what the professional level allows. Really, what college sports is doing now is reducing us to a Pepsi, Coke, Pizza Hut, Domino's, zero sum, where you like one or you like another.
Oh my god!
So basically, it's this situation where you have two favorites, or you have two choices in terms of where you want to get your product in terms of Big 12 or a Big 10 or SEC. So how about we pour out a little bit of RC for the little guys, as college sports conferences as we know it are pretty much dead.
I love the analogies here, Tom. It's kind of like the game Monopoly. I guess it's called duopoly. Is duopoly the word for two?
Yeah,
duopoly. So I know I've disagreed with you sometimes in the show. I've played some contrarian.
For sure.
However, I have to be completely honest from the bottom of my heart. I 100% agree with everything you just said. And I'm going to expand on some of the things you said. By the way, one thing I didn't even think about when I was coming up with my statements, I don't even have much written down. I'm speaking from the heart here, but formulating in my head. I didn't even account for the fact that, yes, you're right. The students, they're going to be flying left and right. And think about that. As great as a lot of those programs are, the vast majority of those kids on the football and basketball team are not going to be professional athletes.
No,
I know a lot of them think they are, but the vast majority are not going to be professional athletes. So that is to the classroom argument point. But to me, rivalries are huge in pro sports. Rivalries are huge everywhere. But rivalries, I would argue, Tom, and maybe you'll agree with me, I feel like you would, are the biggest in college sports.
Yes.
There is no other environment that you have that rivalry like you do in a college sport. Our rivalry and tradition is what makes college sports so incredible. And that is why it's like as a Mizzou fan, I was at first, I was very upset when Mizzou left for the SEC. Now I can understand it. The school gets more money, but it's still part of me still misses that Kansas rivalry. I know they're bringing it. They're bringing it back. I know they're signed a contract. They'll play them in basketball and football coming up.
It's not the same, though.
But it's not the same. And the college kids don't know it. The alums who go to the games don't know it. And yeah, the college kids will get fired up. They'll hear about it, but they don't know what it is waking up to go for a Kansas ticket, sleeping overnight. I don't know if you ever did that. I did that with Drew Brackett, one of our co-hosts one year. Drew and I pitched a tent, and his roommate Aaron was with us as well. And we stayed overnight to get our Kansas basketball tickets. And it was that's what you look forward to when you get your sports ticket package, the Kansas game. That is just such a huge deal. And there's so many rivalries that we are just throwing away. And while moving to the SEC in some ways, I know has probably helped Mizzou financially, but they haven't established that same rivalry. They're trying to go with Arkansas. Tennessee and South Carolina are kind of the ones who are winning out, but it's not the same. And we're just going to basically ruin every rivalry. And here's another point that I have, Tom, too, is think about college football. This pertains more to college football than college basketball. But we talk about the playoff and wanting the 4 best teams. I don't know how this is going to work for a playoff because, obviously it's going to create a lot of big matchups. But when we have an Alabama and Ohio State, maybe this is a bad example. Let me try to think of Alabama and Texas, for example. If they play maybe Texas when they were better. Alabama and Oklahoma. This will be a better example.
Yeah.
Alabama and Oklahoma, when they play every few years in a playoff game or whatever, it's a huge deal. It kind of is going to lose a little bit of its novelty. And there's going to be some years where Oklahoma, for example, will be a top 4 team in college football. They will not get in the playoff because they'll end up playing in some season, Alabama and Georgia. They'll have 2 losses. They might be the 3rd best team in college football, but because they play in the SEC, they will not be in the playoff. Or because someone plays in the Big Ten, they won't be in the playoff. What is this Pac-12 Big Ten Rose Bowl game? I grew up watching that as a kid. I liked Illinois as a kid. It was the Pac-10 versus the Pac-12 in the Rose Bowl. throw that tradition out the window. Just throw it out. Forget about it. It's one thing for us to have several schools move, but we're having the biggest schools. I mean, the Pac-12 without UCLA and USC is nothing. Like the Big 12 without Oklahoma and Texas is nothing.
Nothing.
I know Oregon is there. Oregon is a good school, but UCLA and USC, I mean, UCLA is the biggest basketball powerhouse, USC the biggest football powerhouse. It just changes year to year, but consistently, that is who we think of. So that conference is dead. Now I'm seeing the Pac-12 teams may join the Big 12. Colorado might be rejoining the Big 12, but it just makes no sense. Like you said, going across the country. I mean, like USC, I saw a funny thing on the internet. Gonna play like an Indiana or Rutgers. Imagine that environment, that cold environment with no fans there. It just doesn't feel right. I don't like it. I'm not a fan of it. I mean, talk about college basketball, ACC versus Big 10 challenge, Big 12 challenge, that type of stuff. That is going to be hurt significantly by it. I don't know. I get what they're thinking. They're thinking about money. They think with their wallets,
that's all they're thinking about. Yeah.
Which is what is really sad behind college sports, that's what it is. But beyond that, I just don't like it from the rivalry aspect. And it's not to say that rivalries won't develop, but when there's so many big schools, it makes it harder to have a rivalry with said specific school. And it's going to make it harder for non-conference schedules. I mean, who's going to be left that could be a good non-conference team? I know we'll get some juicy matchups. I know that will maybe be a better part, but overall, it rubs me wrong, and I don't like it.
Yeah, no, I'm the exact same way. I mean, the reason why we talk about, say, Alabama, LSU, or Ohio State, Michigan is because these are rivalries that have been tried and true, or actually even better, Alabama, Auburn. These are rivalries that go back decades, if not, close to, at this point, a century, give or take.
Well, Mizzou, Kansas, that's it, though. That's a good example.
Those things have to build over time. And I guess, sure, you could say, oh, yeah, new traditions will build over time. But I just think it's incredibly short-sighted. And it's also just going to end up being that perhaps we do get back to a little bit more of a way that things used to be in terms of like a reestablishment or a realignment of conferences into these divisions, like I'm saying. And basically it is just, hey, let's get as much money as we can from television providers, from streaming providers, and then we'll go back to arranging things geographically the way they were before. But just kind of like the bald-facedness of it, I agree. It just rubs me the wrong way too. And it's kind of like we don't really as a society seem to prioritize nostalgia as much as I think we should.
And I'm very nostalgic, Tom, and I'm guessing you are too. So
yeah, and so that's what makes this really, difficult to kind of deal with. Even as somebody who purportedly is not, admittedly, I'm not a really big college sports fan, but with the way everything's rearranged, I don't even have the casual interest that I typically do in terms of I know established where everyone generally is. Now it's so mixed around. It's like, do I even really care all that much?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I'll watch it because I love sports, but it won't be the same. There's something to be said about the feel of a sports game. It just looks better when it's two rivals playing each other. Even if you could take the exact same game, the feel of watching it as a fan, just because of the two names, just makes it so much different. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But hey, busy show today, long show. But I think that's about to wrap it up. I think we'll be a little shorter next week, but I definitely enjoy the long form discussion. I think we got both of us, especially me, guilty of it, getting fired up about a topic. But hey, that's why we love doing the show, Tom. That is why we love it. So
absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely a lot of fun to be back, and looking forward to the next show. Not sure exactly if we're going to go back to doing every week, but we'll sort that out on our end and be posting content as available.
I'm looking forward to that discussion on this. Will be coming up maybe next week, maybe the week after, certainly in the coming weeks, the discussion of best athlete to never win a ring. We were originally planning that 2 weeks ago, had a late postponement. Tom, I've got a lot of info on that. So that is just
it will not go to waste.
ready and fired up to go. So it will not go to waste. So don't worry. That week not having the show was not necessarily a go to waste type situation. So
absolutely.
That'll do it for us, though, Tom. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all of our listeners and viewers. If you stuck with us the whole way, you are a true dedicated fan. Gotta love that. We will see you guys probably next week, if not next week, the week after, but at some point here soon. And once we get to football season, we'll definitely be every week without question. We are working on summer hours here, but hopefully next week, if not 2 weeks from now. Thank you, Tom. I will see you soon.